Chapter 4472. Huh. It was only then that Suji finished speaking. He stood up abruptly and looked at the Hall of Heroes. Fairy Xingyu lowered her raised ankle. She looked at Suji in surprise and asked, "What's wrong?" "I don't know." Suji's eyes flashed with lightning. He said hesitantly, "I have a strange feeling as if someone is spying on us." Huh? Fairy Xingyu used her divine thought to check. After a moment she shook her head and said, "That's impossible. Is there anyone in this world who can escape the detection of our divine ability? My punishment fairy weapon has been activated." Suji suddenly touched the thunder mark that had disappeared with his finger and shouted, "There's definitely something unusual. Otherwise, I would have known when the punishment fairy weapon was activated. Moreover, what on the 3 continents is worth the punishment fairy weapon activating itself?" Suji pointed in the direction of the Hall of Heroes and asked, "That place is in that direction? There?" Fairy Xingyu was puzzled. "Below is the Hall of Heroes. Below that is the Hall of Heroes. Below that is the auction hall." Suji's figure swayed. "Quick, the Hall of Heroes. Damn it. How could Fairy Xingyu not know what had happened?" She said angrily. Could it be that the 7-star Great Saint sneaked into the Hall of Heroes? The two ignored the restriction of the Hall of Heroes, crossed the space, and landed in the Hall of Heroes. Ripples flashed in a space in the Hall of Heroes. Amidst the lightning and starlight, Fairy Xingyu and Suji appeared. When the two of them saw everything in the Hall of Heroes, they were surprised again. Fairy Xingyu shouted, "Xiaohua? Why are you in the Hall of Heroes?" Huh. At this time, Xiaohua had just placed the hero book of the last temple in front of the statue's mountain gate, and was about to turn around and leave. Hearing Fairy Xingyu's exclamation, Xiaohua was stunned. He turned around and asked curiously, "Seniors, why did you suddenly appear? Is there something important? Are you the only one in the Hall of Heroes?" Suji asked hurriedly. Xiaohua nodded and said, "Yes, it's me. Previously this junior." Xiaohua was about to explain, but Suji wasn't interested in listening at all. His gaze swept across the entire Hall of Heroes like lightning, and his figure once again flashed with lightning and disappeared. It's fine. When Fairy Xingyu saw Suji heading to the assembly hall, she waved her hand at Xiaohua and said, "Do whatever you want." After saying that, Fairy Xingyu also disappeared. "I'm fine with anything." Xiaohua helplessly scratched his head and thought to himself, although there are many Book of Heroes in this Hall of Heroes, it is still limited. The hand of cause and effect that I have comprehended has only been comprehended once in all the Book of Heroes. If you don't mind, then tell this Xiao where the Moon Embracing Palace is. Xiaohua finished thinking. Just as he was about to take a step forward, he was startled again. "Oh, not good. I just realized, did I disturb the 2 immortals? It seemed like a long time had passed. If not 100 years, then at least 1,000 years, right?" Xiaohua hurriedly came out from the Hall of Heroes. Sure enough, Minister Zhu was still standing respectfully in the distance. Xiaohua hurriedly asked, "Minister Zhu, how long have I been inside the Hall of Heroes?" "How long?" Minister Zhu didn't quite understand, but he still answered honestly, "Senior, you have been in the Hall of Heroes for the time it takes to burn an incense stick." "Oh, that's good." Xiaohua felt relieved. Just as he was about to speak, Minister Zhu said again, "Senior, if you have the time, can you?" Without waiting for Minister Zhu to finish speaking, his figure paused. It was obvious that he was listening attentively. After a few breaths, Minister Zhu respectfully saluted somewhere and said, "This subordinate understands." Then Minister Zhu saluted Xiaohua again and said, "Senior, there are some urgent matters at Zhai Xinglu. This junior can't accompany you. Senior can go to the top floor to rest or walk around as you wish. After this junior is done, I will come to find you." "All right, you can go now." Xiaohua was originally excited to chat with Minister Zhu, but seeing Minister Zhu's unusually respectful manner, he was already a little tired. Seeing that he had something to do, he waved his hand and let him go. This junior will take his leave. Minister Zhu still saluted very politely and quickly left. Alas, etiquette is naturally necessary, but if you take etiquette too seriously, then it's meaningless. This Xiao originally wanted to have a good chat with you. Why is this Xiao still interested now? Xiaohua looked at Minister Zhu's back and understood in his heart that he had only met Minister Zhu once. He wasn't even as familiar as Princess Baihua. It was normal for him to be respectful to him. What happened at Zhaixing Lu? Xiaohua, the main culprit, didn't have the slightest awareness. He smacked his lips and said, "With two immortals here, who dares to be rash? This Xiao had better walk around casually. Perhaps I can find some cheap things?" After walking a few steps, Xiaohua stopped again and laughed even more involuntarily. Damn it, with this Zhao's realm, where can I go to pick up cheap things? Even if there are cheap things, this Xiao would be embarrassed to reach out with my cultivation. As he spoke, Xiaohua's body fluctuated, and his Mahayana cultivation realm slowly fell. It only stabilized when it fell to the upper fourth level of origin power. Xiaohua sized it up and nodded, saying, "This realm is suitable for this Xiao after 200 years. Anyway, even Fairy Xingyu and Suji didn't know what happened to Bai Qingyu. Those human cultivators of Zhaixing Lu probably only cared about entering Star Moon Palace and wouldn't know about Bai Qingyu's matter like those tower lords of Zhaixing Lu. Right? Otherwise, this Xiao will have to change his appearance." Xiaohua finished his preparations and raised his head to look in the direction that Zhu Qing had left. There was a flight of stairs there. Xiaohua walked over and walked down the stairs. There was no movement on the next few floors. Clearly, these were the pavilions that Zhaixing Lu used for their own purposes. Xiaohua wasn't in a hurry, he just walked down the stairs. After half a cup of tea's time, he saw a faint restriction fluctuation, and a burst of noisy aura came from below the pavilion. Xiaohua smiled as if he saw a large pile of good quality spirit grasses appear in front of him. However, just as he turned around the stairs and saw the situation in front of him, Xiaohua was a little disappointed. This was a huge hall that was thousands of feet wide, and there were many cultivators clustered inside. These cultivators were either Confucian cultivators or Taoist cultivators. There were even some bald monks. In a large corner of the hall, there were actually more than 10 demons sitting together. However, there were no spiritual herbs and the like that Xiaohua was hoping to see. Oh, looks like these cultivators and the Yao clan should be the candidates to head to the Star Moon Palace. Xiaohua looked at the cultivators with varying levels of strength and understood. Then he didn't plan to stop and continued walking down. However, at this moment, a slightly excited voice called out, "Xiao? Senior Xiao?" Xiaohua was taken aback. He raised his head and looked over, only to see that not far away from him, there were a dozen or so scholars in scholarly attire. These scholars were either holding folding fans in their hands or holding wine cups in their hands. They were talking loudly and giving pointers. A Confucian cultivator with a slightly aged face was looking at him. That Confucian cultivator's pair of thick and long eyebrows were very eye-catching. "Mr. Emojianli?" Xiaohua looked at this unfamiliar face and immediately remembered. Wasn't this the Confucian cultivator Emojianli that he met in Longevity Town in Country Shi? That day, he and Emojianli had fought against the water monsters of Liao River, and had a fierce battle with Zhang Shang of Dongtian River. He didn't expect to meet him in Thousand Demons' sacred territories Star-Picking Tower hundreds of years later. "Yes, it's me." Seeing that Xiaohua recognized him, Emojianli hurriedly got up and walked quickly to Xiaohua. He bowed and said, "It's been many years since we parted in Longevity Town. I really didn't expect to meet you in Thousand Demons' sacred territories Star-Picking Tower." Emojianli was one of the first Confucian cultivators that Xiaohua met after coming to Hidden Immortal Mainland. This Emojianli cultivated the noble spirit river, and used the righteous qi of heaven and earth to temper his heart. His character and temper were very much to Xiaohua's liking. It was a pity that after Xiaohua left Longevity Town, he didn't have the time to go to Country Shi. Although Emojianli had sent Xiaohua a Jedi message, Xiaohua didn't have the time to go to Chongyun sect to visit Emojianli. Xiaohua's surprise was the same as Emojianli's. He hurriedly helped Emojianli up and asked curiously, "Mr. Emo, why are you at Star-Picking Tower?" "Oh, I understand. You're also qualified to go to Star Moon Palace. Congratulations." Entering the Star Moon Palace was originally a joyous occasion. Xiaohua did not even think before he opened his mouth to congratulate Emojianli. However, when these words reached Emojianli's ears, a layer of red actually appeared on his face. as if he was very ashamed. Seeing this, Xiaohua was a little confused. Emo Jianli's eyes flickered. He followed Xiaohua's tone and asked, "Could it be that you're also going to Star Moon Palace?" "Yes, of course I'm going to Star Moon Palace. My purpose is the same as yours." Xiaohua didn't hide it and said casually, "Mr. Emo, you and I are old friends. We've even experienced life and death together. There's no need to call me senior. Call me Xiaohua or fellow immortal." This isn't too appropriate. At first, Emo Jianli called Xiaohua fellow immortal. However, after Xiaohua's battle with Zhang Sheng, Emo Jianli felt that Xiaohua's strength surpassed his, and that he was a hidden expert. Therefore, when he sent Xiaohua off, he called him senior instead. Now, it had been close to 300 years. Emo Jianli had already cultivated from a scholar who cultivated energy into qi to a scholar who cultivated qi into spirit. He wasn't far from becoming a grandmaster. Among his peers, his cultivation speed was considered fast. However, when he looked at Xiaohua now, he still felt that Xiaohua was stronger than him. How could he call Xiaohua fellow immortal? There's nothing inappropriate. Xiaohua smiled and said, "Why don't I turn around and leave?" "Haha, then we'll do as you say." Emo Jianli had always been carefree. When he heard Xiaohua's words, he smiled and said, Come, fellow immortal Xiao. Let me introduce you to a few old friends." Chapter 4473. As he spoke, Emo Jianli's face was filled with excitement. He pulled Xiaohua's sleeve and walked to the group of Confucian scholars where he was before. He shouted in a slightly loud voice, "Fellow immortals, let me introduce you. These are the Taoist friends I made in the immortal town 300 years ago. His name is Xiaohua. He is a cultivator who cares about the people. We fought against the water tribe of Liao River together." I remember now. Brother Emo. This is the Taoist cultivator with boundless strength that you were talking about. A martial cultivator with a slightly burly figure suddenly came to a realization. He hurriedly cupped his hands and bowed, "I'm Pu Qing. Greetings, fellow immortal Xiao." Thank you. Xiaohua returned the greeting. "Greetings, Xiaohua." Then, a few Confucian cultivators near Emo Jianli greeted Xiaohua politely. Although they were not as close as Pu Qing, they were still polite. When it was the turn of a Confucian cultivator with a white face and no beard, Emo Jianli's face froze. He looked a little unnatural. But he only hesitated a little, then said to Xiaohua with a smile, "Fellow immortal Xiao, this is Gongshu Minghu from the Gongshu family. He is less than 2,000 years old, but he is a master of the 5th level. He is a rare master among us." Emo Jianli was not flattering Xiaohua, but it sounded like he was flattering Xiaohua. Xiaohua did not understand why, but he still smiled and was about to say something. At this time, Emo Jianli said to Gongshu Minghu, "Senior Gongshu, this is my good friend Xiaohua. He is a Taoist cultivator with a good character. His future is limitless. You should get to know each other better." Gongshu Minghu had originally been whispering to a Confucian cultivator beside him, ignoring Emo Jianli's introduction. However, when he heard Emo Jianli's slightly exaggerated introduction, a smile appeared on his face. He had originally wanted to say a few words of encouragement, but when he heard Emo Jianli's last few words, his face changed. He looked at Xiaohua and said coldly, "I don't like Taoist cultivators. There is no need to talk about helping, let alone getting to know each other better. As for good character, it sounds ridiculous. There are many people in the world with 2 legs, but there are not many Taoist cultivators with a heart." Emo Jianli's face turned pale as he gritted his teeth. Gongshu Minghu didn't care about Emo Jianli's expression. He turned his eyes from Xiaohua to Emo Jianli, and said seriously, "Emo Yan, you have to remember what happened to the Chongyun sect. Remember why you lost your home. Your Chongyun sect was doing well in the country of Xi. Why was it destroyed? Why were you expelled from the Chongyun sect? Wasn't it because of the Buddhist sect and the Taoist sect? You are already a literary master. Why don't you learn from your mistakes?" From Xiaohua's point of view, this Gongshu Minghu definitely deserved to be taught a lesson. But from Emo Jianli's point of view, although Gongshu Minghu did not give him any face, he was still a Confucian senior after all. These words might sound unpleasant, but they were still the teachings of a senior. Emo Jianli gritted his teeth and finally lowered his head. Yes, Senior Gongshu is right. Junior should have learned his lesson from being expelled from the sect, and from the tragedy of Chongyun sect's destruction. That's great. Gongshu Minghu nodded. He glanced at Xiao Hua and said, then in the future don't hang out with these cultivators who don't know your background. They will ruin your reputation and bring shame to us Confucian cultivators. Xiao Hua didn't care about Gongshu Minghu's words. In his eyes, Gongshu Minghu was even less than an ant. He just frowned and looked at Emo Jianli, thinking about what Gongshu Minghu just said. Then Emo Jianli slightly raised his head, looked at Gongshu Minghu and said word by word, Senior cares about Junior. Junior naturally has to thank Senior. However, Junior has the right to make friends with whoever he wants. Even if Junior's reputation is ruined, it is Junior's own business. Nobody can interfere. Besides, Junior doesn't think it is shameful to make friends with a Taoist cultivator who put his own life on the line and fought with the Water Tribe just to save the ordinary people of the Longevity Town. Junior also doesn't think Junior's actions will bring shame to Confucian cultivators. Junior is just a poor cultivator. I am far from Senior's arrogant identity and prominent position. Junior's actions can't be so good. Humph, the child can't be taught. Gongshu Minghu saw Emo Jianli ridiculing him. He sneered, flicked his sleeve and scolded, rotten wood can't be carved. With Gongshu Minghu's assertion, the few Confucian cultivators who were close to Emo Jianli before couldn't help but move away. Although Gongshu Minghu didn't leave, the dozen or so Confucian cultivators had already excluded Emo Jianli. Emo Jianli looked at the dozen or so Confucian cultivators who he hadn't introduced yet and sighed in his heart. Fellow immortal Emo? Xiao Hua's voice was light again. Why were you expelled from the sect? How did Chongyun sect get destroyed? What's the state of she now? Alas, Emo Jianli sighed. Looking at the invisible barrier between him and the other Confucian cultivators, he smiled bitterly and said, Fellow immortal Xiao, it's a long story. Don't worry. Xiao Hua smiled and said, Take your time, Gongshu Minghu. Just as Emo Jianli was about to speak, a clear voice came from the stairs. Xiao Hua was stunned and turned his head in disbelief. He saw two beautiful women with bright eyes and white teeth standing there with arrogance on their faces. Wasn't one of them Gongshu Isin? Gongshu Minghu pulled away from Emo Jianli and was talking to the other Confucian cultivators with a trace of arrogance on his face. When he heard someone call his name, he turned his head impatiently. When he saw Gongshu Isin and the other woman, his face immediately lit up. He almost ran to them and bowed. Minghu greets your Auntie Exine and Auntie Ming. May I know why you called me Minghu? Gongshu Isin's face showed obvious disgust and disdain. She said coldly, Gongshu Minghu, although your surname is Gongshu, you're from a side branch of the Gongshu family. You're not listed in the genealogy. You call me Aunt. Where did that come from? If you called me Aunt in private, then so be it. I won't argue with you. But you called me Aunt in public. Are you disregarding the genealogy of the Gongshu family? You don't care about your face, but I do. Don't ruin the reputation of the Gongshu family and embarrass the Gongshu family. Gongshu Minghu knew that Gongshu Isin had always been arrogant and didn't put ordinary people in her eyes. But he didn't expect his words to cause so much trouble. However, Gongshu Minghu knew that although Gongshu Isin's words were unpleasant, every word was correct. Even if he wanted to refute, he couldn't. Just like when he scolded Emo Jianli from the perspective of a senior Confucian cultivator, he stole a glance around. There were already Confucian cultivators snickering. His face was hot and red. Sister Exine. The woman named Gongshu Yiming smiled and pulled Gongshu Isin's sleeve. Although Minghu can't be listed in the genealogy in terms of seniority, he is more than 1,000 years old. He should call you Aunt, a senior who is hundreds of years old. There was nothing wrong with what he said. Why do you have to be angry with that junior? Humph. Gongshu Isin rolled her eyes at Gongshu Yiming and said to Gongshu Minghu, I won't argue with you this time. Uncle Jingyi called you down for something. Hearing this, Gongshu Minghu felt relieved and hurriedly said with a smile, I know. Thank you, Aunt. Senior, however, just as he was about to take a step, Gongshu Isin suddenly screamed. She looked behind her and cried out in surprise, Ah! Gongshu Minghu was shocked. He looked at Gong Shui Sen, who suddenly lost her composure and didn't know what happened. Looking at Gong Shui Xian's eyes again, she stared at Gong Shu Minghu's back. After a few breaths, her face flushed red. She seemed to be suppressing her inner excitement. She hurriedly said, Zhenren Xiao, you? Why are you here? Why didn't I see you enter Star-Picking Tower? Dao. Zhenren Xiao? Xiao. Senior? Although Gong Shu Minghu didn't turn around and didn't know if Xiao Hua was the senior Gong Shui Sen was talking about. But he was stunned because he knew that behind him were Mo Jianli and the others. Among the dozen or so Confucian cultivators, there was no one with the surname Xiao. And the special one, Zhenren Xiao. Wasn't that the title of a Taoist cultivator? Sure enough, Xiao Hua's voice sounded faintly, so it's Miss Isen. I haven't seen you for hundreds of years. How have you been? I'm naturally well. Gong Shu Isen's arrogance had long disappeared. Facing this Xiao Hua who was only 600 years old, but his Taoist cultivation and formation skills were far higher than her, she really didn't have the right to be proud. And the question of whether he was only 400 years old also gave birth to a knot in her heart in these 200 years. How have you been? Gong Shu Isen was like a little girl, foolishly asking back. But in an instant she realized it was inappropriate. While blushing, she hurriedly turned around and grabbed Gong Shu Isen, cheerfully saying, Sister Isen, this is my Chong. When she said the word Chong, Gong Shu Isen's voice instantly lowered a lot. This is the formation master I told you about, a Taoist expert. If it wasn't for him, I wouldn't have been able to step into the upper 5th level in 200 years. Oh sister, don't look down on him because he's only at the upper 4th level. He's the best at deceiving people. That year, Sister Gusu was at the middle 5th level, but she admitted that she wasn't his match. Oh right, I forgot again. He's also a lightning cultivator expert. You can compare notes with him on the 5 Qi Righteous Thunder. Chapter 44-74. Gong Shui Xine, who was a little shy at first, was in high spirits at the end. She couldn't help but laugh, as if the toy she had hidden for a long time was finally seen by others. Boom! Gong Shu Minghu's head seemed to be hit by a hammer. His face was pale, and he didn't know what to say or do. Junior Gong Shui Ming greets Taoist Xiao. Seeing Gong Shui Xine praise Xiao Hua so much, although Gong Shui Ming was puzzled, he didn't dare to neglect and respectfully saluted. Get up. Xiao Hua lightly waved his hand and said, Xiao Hua and Xine are old friends, you don't need to be polite. Many thanks Taoist Xiao. Gong Shui Ming saw Xiao Hua's bearing, and his suspicions were mostly gone. The atmosphere in the hall was a little strange. After all, many people saw Gong Shu Minghu humiliate Mo Jianli, and at this time these two girls from the Gong Shu family, who were called aunts by Gong Shu Minghu, actually called Xiao Hua Senior. This really stepped on Gong Shu Minghu's face to the ground. Taoist Xiao. Suddenly, Gong Shui Ming seemed to think of something and respectfully said, My Gong Shu family's granduncle Jing Yi is downstairs. Would Taoist like to see him? This? Xiao Hua hesitated and replied, Xiao Hua and the Gong Shu family aren't familiar with the others, it's not appropriate? Don't worry, don't worry. Hearing Xiao Hua say he wasn't familiar with the others, Gong Shui Sen hurriedly called out, Taoist Xiao, my family's granduncle Jing Yi is also proficient in some Taoist techniques. He's already a 7th level Taoist master, only one step away from becoming a sage of literature. If Taoist Xiao listens to granduncle Jing Ye's advice, perhaps your cultivation will improve even further. Xiao Hua looked around at the expressions of the Confucian cultivators. He knew that after Gong Shui Xen and the others left, these Confucian cultivators would gather again, so he nodded and said, In that case, Missy Xine, please lead the way. Good. Taoist Xiao, please. Gong Shui Xine and Gong Shui Ming looked at each other, eyes filled with joy, and quickly walked up the stairs. Xiao Hua turned to look at Mo Jianli and smiled. Taoist Mo, come with me, I have something to ask you. This good. Mo Jianli was even more confused when he heard that Xiao Hua's cultivation was even stronger than a 5th grade origin energy. However, he didn't dare to delay and hurriedly followed after. On the other hand, Gong Shui Xine had come to find Gong Shu Ming who, now he was left here. Gong Shui Xine and Gong Shui Ming had forgotten about him before they left. Gong Shu Ming who hesitated for a moment. Although he looked embarrassed, He still hurriedly followed Imo Jianli out of the hall. Gongshu Jingya was already waiting for him downstairs. He did not dare to be negligent. Several people had just disappeared when the entire hall was once again filled with discussions. Although he didn't know what they were talking about before, their only topic now was probably Xiaohua Daoist Xiao. Xiaohua followed Gongshui Xian and Gongshu Yiming to the stairs. Gongshui Xian and Gongshu Yiming walked in front, whispering something. Occasionally they would sneak a glance at Xiaohua, then pursed their lips and chuckled, looking very excited. Xiaohua looked on helplessly. He was embarrassed to eavesdrop. However, he and Gongshui Xian had only talked about Song Langzi's cave residence. Presumably, the two were talking about the thrill at that time. Xiaohua nodded politely to the two, and also whispered to Imo Jianli about the state of Xi. As for Gongshu Minghu, he followed behind the four from afar like a tail. The Gongshu family's floor was not close to here. There was no flying restriction in star-picking tower. However, in order to show respect, everyone did not fly unless there was an urgent matter. Gongshui Xian and the others walked down the stairs. After about the time it took to brew a cup of tea, they passed several floors of pavilions and walked out of the stairs. Along the way, there were many family disciples going up and down the stairs. Many people greeted Gongshui Xian. Clearly, Gongshui Xian's reputation was very well known among the family. Many family disciples almost ignored Xiaohua and Imo Jianli. Xiaohua naturally did not have time to look at their faces. He frowned as he listened to Imo Jianli's story. At this time he also understood the reason. After Imo Jianli, Qiu Jian, Liemo Ming and Ji Dong returned from the disaster relief in Xi. Because of their contributions they were rewarded. Imo Jianli was rewarded with a higher-level cultivation method. However, this reward was not fully implemented. Because there was no fruit of Guanyin Bodhisattva in Longevity Town, the entire Xi became the focus of Yu Province, and even the 9 provinces of the hidden immortal continent. Not only was Xiaohua's battle with Zhang Sheng not mentioned, even Imo Jianli and the others' rescue of the people in the town of Longevity was also erased. There were even Confucian cultivators who blamed Chongyun sect for the lack of Guanyin Bodhisattva in the town of Longevity on the unfavorable inspection of the development of the Buddhism sect. They did not fulfill the responsibility of a Confucian sect, especially when the town of Longevity was slowly becoming the #1 town of the Buddhism sect in the Zhongxian continent. The Confucian cultivators made things difficult for the Chongyun sect. They demanded that the Chongyun sect be responsible for this matter, and proposed countermeasures. Under such circumstances, the Chongyun sect could only push out Zhu Junfeng, Mr. Taiyan and the others from the Longevity Academy, as well as Imo Jianli, Qiu Jian, Liemo Ming and Ji Dong. After all, Zhu Junfeng was in charge of the Longevity Academy, and Imo Jianli and the others had been to the Longevity town, and had personally experienced that milestone. Punishment was necessary, and so was punishment. Everything had to be explained to the Confucian cultivators of Yu Province. Zhu Junfeng and Mr. Taiyan's punishment did not need to be discussed in detail. As the leader of Qiu Jian and the others, Imo Jianli did not want the other 3 to bear the blame, so he took all the blame. Fortunately, although Shangguan Feiyu, as the head of Chongyun sect, could not resist the pressure of Yu Province's Confucian cultivators, he was lenient in dealing with Imo Jianli. He did not make things too difficult for Imo Jianli, and only expelled him from Chongyun sect. After Imo Jianli left Chongyun sect, he did not change his name and join other sections. He only became a professor in some unknown colleges. It could be considered a blessing in disguise. Imo Jianli, who had thrown away glory and trifles, returned to tranquility. He, who was engrossed in reading, found the opportunity to break through the noble spirit river. His cultivation also flowed like the river, and he reached the level of a scholar. However, after reaching the level of a scholar, Imo Jianli needed a more profound Confucian cultivation technique. Although the noble spirit river was the most widespread technique left in the hidden immortal land, after reaching the level of a scholar, it belonged to the secrets of various sections. It was very difficult for cultivators without a sect to obtain it. Imo Jianli could only go to Zhaixing Lu to find a suitable technique. Later, due to a coincidence, Imo Jianli passed the test of Zhaixing Lu, and was listed as one of the candidates to enter Xingyue Palace. Unlike Xiaohua, Imo Jianli had an agreement with Zhaixing Lu. He would listen to Zhai Xinglu's arrangements and participate in the grand meeting of Xingyue Palace, and Zhai Xinglu would provide Emo Jianli with the conditions to cultivate. With this opportunity, Emo Jianli's cultivation became much smoother. In the past 200 years, his progress was also gratifying. When Xingyue Palace discovered that Xingyue Palace might appear in the sacred realm of Thousand Demons, Emo Jianli and the rest of the cultivators were sent to the sacred realm of Thousand Demons by Zhai Xinglu. Therefore, not only did Emo Jianli not know about Bai Qingyu, but he also did not know about the divine demon blood pool. As for Chongyun sect, when the longevity town became the #1 town of the Buddhist sect, it was already in the eyes of the bodhisattvas. It was destined to be the center of tragedy. Chongyun sect did a lot of effort to expel Emo Jianli and punish Zhu Junfeng. They also made a lot of compromises. The entire Chongyun sect was like duckweed in the wind and rain, struggling bitterly. However, after the longevity town Shaojin Temple's abbot, Lushan, who did not have any cultivation, was mysteriously killed, Chongyun sect could no longer hold on. Although this incident was the last straw that broke the Chongyun sect's back, it was also a heavenly tribulation that the small Chongyun sect could not withstand. Chongyun sect was annihilated by a bodhisattva who came out of nowhere. Whether the bodhisattva who annihilated the sect was a Buddhist or a Confucian cultivator, whether he was venting his anger or trying to frame them, no one knew the truth, just like Lushan's death. The death of the entire Chongyun sect was even more tragic than Lushan's death. Lushan's death almost led to a war between the immortals and Buddhas, which led to the Nirvana Sutra seeking. But the death of Chongyun sect was really like duckweed, falling into the wind and rain. Unless Emo Jianli mentioned it to Xiaohua now, who else would remember that unremarkable little Confucian sect 200 years ago? Seeing Gongshu Yisin and Gongshu Yiming slow down, Xiaohua stopped and looked at Emo Jianli, saying, "Jianli, when I first arrived at the longevity town, I encountered the Liaozhong incident. I also met a Confucian cultivator like you, who is as noble as a river. I have a very good impression of you. The Liaozhong incident. The root cause is related to a disciple of mine. How about this as compensation? From now on you will follow me." At this point, Xiaohua hesitated again. He originally wanted to take Emo Jianli as his disciple. However, he also had a premonition that he could not casually take in his disciples. Previously he took in Yuanya Fujiwen, Lu Yi Wang Bianfei, Wu Tian, Chong Yuan Jiang Hong and Yu Zhongquan as inner disciples. But when they arrived at the ruins, Wu Tian chose to stay in the upper world for his own pursuit. Xiaohua's inner disciples stopped at 7. After that, he took in Li Xiang, Xiongyi, Prince Lan, Chong Yu Xian Songzi, and Reverend Jingting as outer disciples. In Bai Qingyu, Xiaohua took in Ao Zhantian and Su Tingzi as outer disciples. However, it was also in Bai Qingyu that Chong Yu died. Prince Lan's loyalty was doubted, and Xiaohua's number of outer disciples fell to 7. Perhaps it was because he had just experienced the hand of cause and effect. Xiaohua became alert. He felt that he could only accept 7 disciples and could not accept more. If he accepted Emo Jianli, then he would have more than 7 disciples. Even if there was really something wrong with Prince Lan, Emo Jianli had already taken the last disciple spot. But Emo Jianli was only a 4th-level literature master. With Xiaohua's strength, he probably did not have much time to teach such a low-level Confucian disciple. Moreover, Xiaohua already had a candidate in mind for the last disciple spot. Therefore Xiaohua hesitated. Chapter 4475. Junior appreciates Senior's kind intentions. Emo Jianli smiled. Junior is a Confucian cultivator. It would be inconvenient for me to follow Senior. Moreover, Junior is a disciple of the Chongyun sect, which is related to the longevity town's conflict. It would also bring trouble to Senior. Haha. Xiaohua laughed and said, "If you didn't say this, this Xiao would have hesitated. But since you have spoken your mind, how could this Xiao disappoint you? This Xiao may not have the time to teach you a Confucian cultivation technique, but this Xiao remembers that you should cultivate a Confucian sword technique. This Xiao has a disciple who is good at sword techniques. This Xiao thinks that he should take you as a disciple of the Fortune Gate." Fortune Gate? Emo Jianli was stunned. He couldn't believe his ears and shouted, "When did Senior enter a Confucian sect? This junior doesn't seem to have heard of a Confucian sect called the Fortune Gate. While the two were talking, Gongshu Minghu had already walked behind them. Xiaohua looked at Gongshu Minghu and walked towards the pavilion. He said, "This matter is settled. When we come out of the Bright Moon Palace, this Xiao will take you to see him." Senior. Imogenly hurriedly chased after him, wanting to say something. Unfortunately, Xiaohua smiled and said, "You don't have to say anything. If you see this Zhao's disciple and feel that it's not suitable, then it's fine. It's not too late to refuse." Xiaohua didn't think that Imogenly would refuse Yu Zhongquan and Chang Yuan, who were already at the 7th level. Oh, okay. Facing Xiaohua's arbitrary decision, Imogenly was helpless. He nodded slightly and followed behind Xiaohua. However, his thoughts were different from Xiaohua's. He didn't believe that Xiaohua's disciple would have any outstanding cultivation. Of course, he didn't complain about why Xiaohua didn't take him as a disciple. Imogenly was a grateful person. After being expelled and homeless, he felt that Xiaohua's kindness was a kind of enjoyment. Turning the corner, they came across a small hall. Gongshu Yisan and Gongshu Yiming walked to the entrance of the hall and looked back. When they saw Xiaohua and Imogenly coming over, they smiled at each other and quickly walked in. When Xiaohua entered the palace, he saw a tall young Confucian cultivator, who looked similar to Gongshu Yisan. The Confucian cultivator had a smile on his face as he looked at Xiaohua. Next to him, Gongshu Yisan was holding his arm and acting like a spoiled little girl. On the two sides of this Confucian cultivator, there were a few men and women who were around the 5th or 6th grade of origin energy. These men and women all had imposing appearances and were intelligent on the inside, like dragons and phoenixes among men. Needless to say, this person was the Gongshu Jingyi that Gongshu Yisan had mentioned, the 7th level elemental energy grandmaster. Looking at Gongshu Jingyi sitting steadily on the chair, waiting for him to pay his respects, Xiaohua smiled bitterly. He had really lifted a stone to smash his own foot. He originally disliked Zhu Qing's respect for him, and wanted to find a more approachable feeling. He didn't expect that as soon as he met Imogenly, he would be humiliated by Gongshu Minghu. Gongshu Yisan came over to smooth things over for him, and then he had to follow her to pay his respects to a 7th level elemental energy grandmaster. Gongshu Yisan had good intentions. After all, the guidance or care of a high-level elemental energy grandmaster was a kind of opportunity. Gongshu Yisan would disdain to introduce ordinary cultivators. However, Gongshu Yisan had met Xiaohua. How could a human Taoist Grand Ascension stage cultivator meet a Confucian grandmaster with the power of a junior? Etiquette. Xiaohua sighed. The etiquette of Confucian cultivators is a bit pedantic, but in essence it is a kind of order. As the Immortal Realm's executioner, Su Ji upholds it. I was a bit rash today. Thinking of this, Xiaohua slightly straightened his body, about to reveal his cultivation level. However, at this moment, a slightly excited voice came from behind him. "Yiming, you also came to the Thousand Demons Sacred Realm? I just came to Star Picking Tower and heard that the Gongshu family was also here. I was thinking that since you are a junior of the Gongshu family, how could you not be on this trip to the Star Moon Palace? Look. This is the thunder amplification wood that I found for you. It will definitely be useful for you to cultivate the 5 Qi righteous thunder." Haha. Xiaohua did not need to turn around, nor did he need to look back, nor did he need to use his divine perception to check. Just this voice alone was enough for Xiaohua to laugh. He could clearly tell that this was Duan Muqing, who had formed a grudge with him in Star Picking Tower in the Bronze Pillar Nation. That night, Xiaohua had taught Duan Muqing and Duan Muqiu a lesson. He had also said in front of Duan Muqing that he wanted to see if the so-called Confucian family still had justice, fairness, and justice. Duan Muqing had also made it clear that she did not believe in justice, fairness, and justice. She had asked Xiaohua to wait for her justice. After that, when Xiaohua had almost forgotten, he had finally waited for the Duanmu family's justice. That was the pursuit of Duanmu Liangsheng in Songlangzi's cave. Duanmu Liangsheng could be considered a hot-blooded man, but he was after all a disciple of the Duanmu family. Although he admired Xiaohua, he had no choice but to kill him. Fortunately, although Xiaohua's strength at that time was slightly inferior to Duanmu Liangsheng, it was not a problem for him to escape. Therefore, he was able to escape from the Duanmu family's justice. Duanmu Liangsheng had also obtained an opportunity in Song Langzi's cave, and did not find trouble with Xiao Hua again. What Xiao Hua did not expect was that when he had just returned to the 3 continents from the primitive continent and had not even taken a step into the hidden immortal continent, all the karma from before had actually appeared here. Not only did he see Mo Jianli and Gong Shui Xian, but he also saw Duanmu Qing, whom he had almost forgotten. Suddenly, Xiao Hua had a bad premonition. Damn it, it can't be. Could it be that Su Ji's divination skills are so miraculous? This Star Moon Palace is indeed the last time I leave. When the 2 of them return to the immortal realm, I will also have the opportunity to choose. Otherwise, with so many old grudges, how could they all appear here? Of course, this thought was just a flash. He had some understanding that it was not his old grudges, but the opportunity of the Star Moon Palace. Because of the appearance of the Star Moon Palace, all the families in the hidden immortal continent would send disciples who needed opportunities to come to the Star Moon Palace. Not only the disciples of the families who had grudges with him, but also the disciples of the families who had grudges with him would all have the opportunity to come to the Star Moon Palace. They would also, at the appropriate time, resolve the grudges between them. While Xiao Hua was thinking, Duanmu Qing had already said something excitedly. She walked past Xiao Hua and arrived in front of Gongshu Jingyi. She bowed and said, "Great-granduncle, Junior Duanmu Qing from the Duanmu family pays respect to great-granduncle." Gongshu Jingyi was waiting for Xiao Hua to greet him, but Duanmu Qing's sudden appearance stole Xiao Hua's limelight. Gongshu Jingyi could not stand in front of the Duanmu family. He retracted his gaze from Xiao Hua and raised his hand. "Get up, this is Star Picking Tower, no need to be too polite." Gong Shui Xian was not willing to give Duanmu Qing a good face. She snorted and said, "You're just a branch of the Duanmu family, and you dare to call yourself a disciple of the family? Aren't you afraid that the Duanmu family's ancestor will scold you?" This Duanmu Qing did not dare to say anything in front of Gong Shui Xian. Gong Shu Jingye's lips curled. He knew clearly about Gong Shui Xian's arrogance. He also knew that her scolding of Duanmu Qing was reasonable. However, he could only scold her. Duanmu Qing is also a disciple of the family. There are some words that you cannot say casually. "Humph, great-granduncle, you think I want to say it?" Gong Shui Xian said coldly. "If he did not pester Yiming Jejia, even if I saw him, I would only treat him as a toad." He did not go back to look for a mirror. He is not only a branch disciple of the Duanmu family, he is also a literary master who has just stepped into spirit-refining qi. How can he be worthy of Yiming Jejia? Moreover, Yiming Jejia had already told him clearly 100 years ago that she did not wish to see him again. But what about him? Seeing Yiming Jejia's soft personality, forcing her step by step, showing an infatuated face in front of the elders to gain sympathy. Isn't it just a thunder-amplifying wood? What's so great about it that he would give it to Yiming Jejia in front of great-granduncle? This kind of wild ambition, great-granduncle is embarrassed to say it, but I will say it. Ixai. Gong Shui Ming at the side also seemed to be unable to bear it. She pulled Gong Shui Xian's sleeve and said, "Don't say it in front of everyone, this is not good." "What is not good about it?" "It is because you are always thinking for others that you have landed in such an awkward situation. Now many disciples of the aristocratic families know that this guy is pursuing sister. Even if there are outstanding disciples who want to propose marriage to sister, they would be embarrassed. They would be afraid of brushing away the face of the Duanmu family." Gong Shui Xian understood Duanmu Qing's thoughts and hit the nail on the head. In reality, the Duanmu family does not even know of this guy's plans. It is not that bad. Gong Shu Yiming's face was slightly red as she said in a low voice. Xiao Hua originally did not like Gong Shui Xian's outspokenness, but hearing it now made him very happy. He smiled and stopped walking, watching with interest. Duanmu Qing naturally did not know that Xiao Hua was here. His face was slightly pale as he said in a low voice, "Senior Gongshu, Junior knows that my cultivation is shallow and my background is not as good as Senior's. So from Senior's point of view, Junior's actions are indeed so. But Junior can say it to Senior without any reservation, to the disciples of the Gongshu family. Junior can even say it to the heavens and the earth with a clear conscience. Love had no limits, no rank and no strength. Perhaps Yiming Lady feels that Junior is not suitable, but from the moment Junior saw Yiming Lady, I have already treated her as my fairy. Junior does not dare to think too much because I am afraid that if I think too much it will make that impression dim. Junior can only think faintly when the lanterns are lit, and hope that the night will make this longing last a little longer. Junior also knows that Junior is not worthy of Miss Yiming, but Junior is willing to be one of Miss Yiming's many admirers. Junior hopes that her path of cultivation will be smooth. Junior is willing to give up everything for her. Chapter 4476. Duanmu Qing spoke with deep affection. Not only did Gongshu Yiming blush, even Gongshui Xian felt embarrassed and felt that she might have gone overboard. Duanmu Qing continued. Junior heard that Miss Yiming's 5-chi thunder had reached a bottleneck and was unable to break through, so I have been thinking of a way for her. 200 years ago, Junior heard that the star-picking tower of Copper Pillar Country was bidding for the thunder-developing wood. Junior hurriedly went there to bid for the thunder-developing wood and give it to Miss Yiming to comprehend. Unfortunately, Junior was deceived by a despicable Dao sect cultivator and was unable to bid for the thunder-developing wood. In the following days, Junior has been looking for opportunities. Fortunately, the heavens were moved by Junior. A few years ago, Junior finally bid for a similar thunder-developing wood at the auction of the Luo Yi Merchant Union. After Junior obtained the thunder-developing wood, Junior hurriedly went to find Miss Yiming. Unfortunately, Miss Yiming was no longer in the Gongshu family. Junior asked around but could not find Miss Yiming's whereabouts. Later, Junior heard news of the Star Moon Palace and immediately understood. Although Junior is not a candidate to enter the Star Moon Palace, Junior still tried my best to ask a senior in the family to bring Junior here. Junior does not wish to enter the Star Moon Palace. Junior only wishes to see Miss Yiming here and give her this thunder-developing wood. Junior also knows that as long as Miss Yiming enters the Star Moon Palace, after she comes out, her 5-chi thunder will definitely break through the bottleneck and step into the upper 5th grade of essence force. Junior is even more inferior. However, Junior does not regret it. Junior hopes that Junior can be a pebble under Miss Yiming's feet. As long as Miss Yiming can step on Junior safely, Junior will be satisfied. As she spoke, Duanmu Qing took the thunder-developing wood and walked in front of Gongshu Yiming. She looked at Gongshu Yiming affectionately. Damn it! Xiao Hua was flabbergasted. This guy really knows how to talk. I can't compare to him. Even Xiao Hua said so. Gongshu Yiming's face was naturally hot. She lowered her head slightly and raised her slender white hand to take the thunder-developing wood. Seeing that Gongshu Yiming was about to take the thunder-amplifying wood, Gongshui Xian, who was trying to break up the couple, came to her senses. She hurriedly pulled Gongshu Yiming behind her and said coldly, "Humph, I hate this kind of flowery speech the most. You want to trick me with a piece of wood? If you have the ability, come here on a rainbow cloud." Gongshui Xian looked up at Xiao Hua and said, "Xiao Hua, I remember you have a thunder-devouring bead, right? 200 years is enough for you. Why don't you lend it to big sister Yiming first? Don't worry, after you borrow it, my Gongshu family will definitely protect you and won't let the Immortal Palace find trouble with you." Xiao Hua. When Duanmu Qing heard Xiao Hua's name, she was startled as if she was bitten by a snake or scorpion. She turned to look at Xiao Hua. Xiao Hua had a bitter smile on his face, but he was feeling very good in his heart. He had just used his divine ability and was about to make trouble. When he heard Gongshui Xian was disrupting the situation, he immediately took 2 steps forward and touched his nose. He looked thoughtfully at Duanmu Qing and said, "Young Master Duanmu, that despicable cultivator from the star-picking tower in the Bronze Pillar Country who used despicable means to deceive you is here. I want to ask you, what despicable means did I use to deceive you at the auction at Star-Picking Tower?" You. Duanmu Qing was dumbfounded. Those few words of his were merely to set off the atmosphere, to emphasize the hardships of not being able to obtain the thunder amplification wood. However, he never expected that Xiao Hua, whom he hadn't seen for several hundred years, would actually be right behind him. Moreover, he had directly passed by Xiao Hua without even noticing him. Moreover, Xiao Hua's question was even more heart-wrenching. Not to mention that Xiao Hua did not have any despicable means. Even if he did, that was Star Picking Tower's auction. And it was from hundreds of years ago. Duan Muqing bringing up old scores in Star Picking Tower's territory was not only giving Star Picking Tower a bad look, but also finding trouble for herself. Details determine success or failure. The remorseful Duan Muqing really wanted to grab the extra words out of everyone's ears and swallow them herself. Ah? Ha ha ha. When Gong Shui Xian heard this, a look of surprise appeared on her face. She hurriedly said, "What? You were the one who bid for the Thunder Developing Wood? How could you have won against young Master Duanmu from the Duanmu family? Quickly tell us, how despicable were you at that time?" Seeing that Gong Shui Xian did not mind blowing things up, Xiao Hua was also happy to add insult to injury. He nodded and said, "Even if Lady Gongshu did not say this, I would still say it. Not to mention my innocence, even Star Picking Tower's justice will be tarnished." Hearing Xiao Hua mention justice, Duan Muqing's face turned pale. Xiao Hua did not add any details and narrated everything from the time he met Duan Muqiu to the time he said, "Fairness, justice and justice," to Duan Muqing. Indeed, without waiting for him to say much, when the group of Gongshu family disciples heard that Duan Muqing sat on the dragon horse carriage and headed towards Star Picking Tower, their faces were filled with disdain. The aristocratic family's carriages all had their own standards and were not for any aristocratic family disciples to sit on. Gong Shui Xian could sit on it, Gong Shui Ming could sit on it, Murong Songyun could also sit on it, but Duan Muqing, a side family disciple, could not sit on it, because she could not represent the Duanmu family. Xiao Hua naturally did not know about this rule, but the Gongshu family disciples knew it clearly. Without mentioning anything else, how could Gong Shui Ming accept her flamboyant personality? Oh, that's right. After explaining the matter at Star Picking Tower, Xiao Hua slapped his forehead. Looking at Gong Shui Xian, he seemed to have thought of something and said, "I almost forgot, Duanmu Gongzi is a person who keeps his promises. That was what I said that day. Duan Muqing, I will remember your words. But I will give you a word of advice. Don't think that no one knows what is right and wrong here. Even the aristocratic families of Confucian cultivators cannot stop the mouths of the people. A Duanmu family carriage driver is now Jin Gui. You can only let him bully others, but others cannot retaliate? I will wait for your Duanmu family's condemnation. I want to see if the aristocratic families of Confucian cultivators still have justice, and justice." And at that time Duanmu Gongzi's reply was, "Justice, and justice? Let's go, let this Taoist wait for his justice." Xiao Hua looked at Duan Muqing and smiled. "Duanmu Gongzi, did I say anything wrong?" Duan Muqing bit her lips and did not reply. "And the result? Say it. Gong Shui Xian was interested and urged, "What happened after that?" "After that, Lady Gongshu, do you still remember the 5th grade middle-tier Confucian cultivator who suddenly appeared in the Cloud Mountain maze?" Xiao Hua asked. Gong Shui Xian actually did not have any impression of Duanmu Liangsheng. But at this time she did not know how to reply. She nodded like a chicken pecking rice. Yes, that extremely powerful Confucian cultivator. And he is the justice that the Duanmu family gave me. Xiao Hua said with a smile. "Oh, Duanmu Liangsheng? Order of death?" Gongshu Jingyi, who was at the side, was watching the younger generation quarrel like a play. However, when he heard this, he suddenly understood. He frowned and said a few words in a low voice. He looked at Duan Muqing and didn't say anything. However, the disciples of the Gongshu clan who were present all despised her. Everyone knew what Duan Muqing had done after the order of death. In front of such sinister thoughts, the sweet words that Duan Muqing had said earlier had become a honey sword. "Yes," Xiao Hua smiled, "the Duanmu family's order of death is the justice that Duanmu Gongzi gave me. If not for my good luck, I am afraid that I would not have the chance to talk about Duanmu Gongzi's heroic deeds in front of everyone." Duan Muqing sighed slightly. She looked at the crowd and her gaze landed on Gongshu Yiming's face. She said, "Things are not as simple as Immortal Xiao said. However, I do not wish to explain anything at this moment. Because the same thing can be said by different people, it will have different effects. I admit that I do not have a glib tongue like Immortal Xiao. Everything will be revealed in the future. However, Miss Yiming, even though I may have done something wrong, your cultivation cannot be delayed. This thunder amplifying wood is very important to you. It is innocent, you must accept it. What is the use of a mere thunder amplifying wood? It is just a chicken rib. Only those who do not understand the lightning cultivation arts would treat it as a treasure. Xiaohua took 2 steps forward and disdainfully glanced at the jade box in Duan Muqing's hands. Inside the jade box, there was a lone thunder amplifying wood that was sealed within. Xiaohua said coldly, Duan Muqing, do you think that you can let Miss Yiming's 5-qi legitimate thunder break through the bottleneck with a piece of wood that has been struck by lightning? If that is the case, there are probably a bunch of lightning cultivators in this world, right? Duan Muqing tried her best to maintain a cultured and refined image in front of Gongshu Yiming. Even when Xiaohua exposed her earlier, she did not get angry. She understood that Xiaohua was just a Dao cultivator. Even if she was from a side branch of the Duanmu clan, she was still a disciple of the clan. Her words were far more important than Xiaohua's words. There was no need for her to confront Xiaohua here. She could just wait for an opportunity to make up for it. But now, Xiaohua had once again belittled the thunder amplification wood that he had painstakingly found as worthless. He looked at Xiaohua and said coldly, this one does not have the qualifications to know if this thunder amplification wood is useful for Miss Yiming's cultivation. However, this thunder amplification wood was something that Miss Yiming occasionally mentioned on that day, so this one remembered it in my heart. This one also admits that this one really does not know how useful this item is for Miss Yiming to break through her bottleneck. However, I know that as long as I work hard, Miss Yiming will definitely benefit from this thunder amplifying wood. What about you? Could it be that a Dao cultivator who is not even at the 5th grade of elemental energy knows that this thunder amplifying wood is useless to Miss Yiming? What qualifications do you have to say such useless words? Chapter 4477. At this moment, Xiaohua naturally wouldn't put Duan Muqing in his eyes and wouldn't be so bored as to argue with her. Xiaohua faintly smiled. He raised his hand and took out a silk handkerchief from his bosom. He said, for me to be able to say such words, I naturally have my reasons. I won't be like some people, whose mouth is full of nonsense and only one word is true. Saying this, Xiaohua placed the silk handkerchief in front of Gongshu Yiming, saying, Miss Yiming, do you think this is useful for your cultivation of the 5-qi thunder? This is? Seeing Xiaohua take out a silk handkerchief instead of thunder-developing bead or thunder-developing wood, let alone Gongshu Yixin, even Gongshu Yiming blushed. She looked at Xiaohua with some confusion. After all, silk handkerchiefs were mostly for private use by female cultivators. Men and women giving silk handkerchiefs had other meanings. Damn it! Others might be puzzled. But Duan Muqing was so angry that her lungs were about to explode. She already thought that Xiaohua was revealing something to Gongshu Yiming in front of everyone. Flirting in front of her. Xiaohua, what do you mean by this? Gongshu Yixin was straightforward, shouting, I told you to take out the thunder amplifying bead, you. What do you mean by this? Why don't Miss Yixin take a look first? Xiaohua turned and smiled at Gongshu Yixin, saying, you have a certain level of attainment in formations, you should be able to see it. Oh. Gongshu Yixin looked at Gongshu Jingyi. That Gongshu Jingyi just looked at her with a smile and didn't say anything. He was also young, how could he not know the jealousy between young people? Seeing Gongshu Jingyi not saying anything, Gongshu Yixin said, raising her hand to take the silk handkerchief. When she took the silk handkerchief, she used her silver moon pupil. Just one look and her expression changed. She looked at Xiaohua in disbelief. The clear eye technique in her eyes didn't disappear. She exclaimed, Xiaohua, it's true. Don't worry. Xiaohua smiled, don't you know my reputation? Che? Gongshu Yixin retracted her silver moon pupil, curling her lips, saying, what reputation do you have? That day in the cave you cheated so many people. Then Gongshu Yixin didn't give the silk handkerchief to Gongshu Yiming. Instead, she held it in her hand, smiling at Yiming. Sister Yiming, can I make a deal with you? Can you lend this item to sister to study? What is this? Gongshu Yiming looked confusedly at the silk handkerchief in Gongshu Yixin's hand and asked. Gongshu Yixin opened her mouth and seemed to have some misgivings. She didn't give the handkerchief to Gongshu Yiming and transmitted to Gongshu Yiming. This is the Immortal Palace's 5 brocade cloud painting. Ah? Gongshu Yiming was ecstatic. She almost cried out, how is this possible? The 5 Qi Thunder was the purest form of cultivation in the Immortal Palace. The Gongshu clan also had it, but the flaws were obvious. They couldn't fix the flaws in their cultivation method during the tribulation. Therefore, Gongshu Yiming had always wanted to get the cultivation method of the 5 Qi Thunder from the Immortal Palace. This 5 brocade cloud painting was not a complete lightning cultivation method, but it contained the 5 Qi Thunder. If Gongshu Yiming had this item to study, she could easily break through her current bottleneck. Gongshu Yiming screamed and quickly covered her mouth, smiling at Xiaohua. Thank you, immortal friend Xiao. Xiaohua smiled. No need to be so polite. If there's anything you don't understand. Without waiting for Xiaohua to finish speaking, Duan Muqing, who was at the side, retracted her hand and withdrew the awkwardness in everyone's eyes. She interrupted Xiaohua's words and said with a hint of anger, Xiaohua, I did not want to lower myself to your level when you used the matter from several hundred years ago to frame me. But then you use filthy words to slander my Duanmu clan's kill order. This matter involves the dignity of my Duanmu clan, so I represent the Duanmu clan to invite you to join the battle to bury the hatchet. When Gongshu Jingyi heard this, he unconsciously snorted from his nose and said unhappily, Duanmu Qing, you are in my Gongshu family's pavilion, representing the Duanmu family to challenge Xiaohua. What is the meaning of this? Duanmu Qing was startled, and immediately realized the impropriety of her words. She hurriedly smiled and said, Great-granduncle, it is all Junior's fault. Junior was really disheartened by this Dao sect cultivator. My words were wrong. Junior apologizes to great-granduncle, and apologizes to the elders of the Gongshu clan. Finishing, Duanmu Qing did not give Gongshu Yexin and the others a chance to speak. She said to Xiaohua, Xiaohua, you and I originally had a personal grudge. Now the battle to bury the hatchet at Zhaixinglu is about to start. You may not be a disciple of a great clan, but you are in Zhaixinglu now, you can still join the battle. How about it? In the battle to bury the hatchet, let's settle our previous grudges? This time Duanmu Qing kept on talking about personal grievances. Gongshu Jingyi just looked indifferently and didn't say anything. Gongshu Yexen glared at Duanmu Qing and said coldly, What? Angry out of humiliation? All your tricks have been exposed, you can't live with your face? You want to be silenced by the battle to bury the hatchet? One look and you can tell he is a bluff. You can't beat Xiaohua, so you want to use the power of the Duanmu clan to suppress him? Then Gongshu Yexen waved her hand at Xiaohua and said, Xiaohua, ignore him. You are not a disciple of a great clan. Why are you participating in the battle to bury the hatchet? Senior Yexin. Duanmu Qing looked at Gongshu Yexin and said seriously, Xiaohua may not be a disciple of a great clan, but he is in Zhaixinglu, and this is before the opening of the Star Moon Palace. He also has a grudge with Junior. This meets the conditions for the battle? Of course, if Xiaohua does not wish to participate, Junior will not force him. He only needs to apologize to Junior in front of everyone during the battle to bury the hatchet. Junior may consider forgiving him, and can also consider asking the sect to take back the kill warrant. At this point, Duanmu Qing glanced at Xiaohua and said, Besides, if a man of indomitable spirit does not even dare to accept such a small challenge, what right does he have to call himself a man? What right does he have to cultivate the powerful lightning energy? Xiaohua laughed involuntarily when he heard Duanmu Qing's provocation. He really did not know how to answer. How could he, a human Mahayana realm cultivator, be so calculative with this guy? Even if he only revealed the strength of a peak 4th grade Yuan Qi, it was not possible to bet with him, right? Seeing that Xiaohua did not speak, Duanmu Qing naturally thought that Xiaohua was timid. She added fuel to the fire and said, How about this, Xiaohua? If you do not wish to participate, you only need to apologize to me here, and I will forgive you. Humph, Duanmu Qing. Gongshu Yexin snorted before Xiaohua could say anything. If you are so capable, why don't you fight Xiaohua one-on-one during the battle to bury the hatchet? Don't think I can't see your sinister intentions. You just want to borrow the Duanmu clan's blade to kill Xiaohua. Oh, Xiaohua asked curiously. Exian, could it be that during the battle to bury the hatchet, It doesn't have to be two disciples who have personal grudges. Of course, Gong Shui Xen was a little angry. Since the various clans are participating, we have to consider their reputation. It doesn't have to be disciples with personal grudges. Don't be fooled. He can't beat you, so he wants someone else to do it. Xiaohua. Duan Muqing did not care that Gong Shui Xen had exposed her thoughts. She smiled and said, if I were you, I would definitely go up and give it a try. After all, my Duanmu clan's kill order is still in effect. Any Duanmu clan disciple can kill you, and they can even return to the sect to receive a reward. If you are lucky enough to win, the kill order will no longer exist, and you can cultivate in peace in the future. Fine. Xiaohua looked at Duan Muqing, who was acting like a clown, and sneered in his heart. Since Xiaohua didn't have to do it himself, he could just find a Fortune Gate disciple from the Shenhua mainland. Hence, Xiaohua nodded and said, this Xiao agrees to fight with you. Good. Duan Muqing's eyes flashed with a cunning look. She smiled and said, looks like you are a man. Come, let's make an oath. Duan Muqing raised her right hand and looked at Xiaohua. Xiaohua waved his hand slightly, as if he was shooing away a fly. He said, no need. You are not worthy. Damn it. Duan Muqing could not help cursing in a low voice. So you are so cunning. If we don't make an oath, who knows if you will participate? Perhaps you've been planning to slip away for a long time? Duan Muqing was a little confused, just like Ao Qian from the Southern Sea Dragon Palace. However, one was for power, the other was for love. Oh, or it could be said that behind love, there was also the pursuit of power. Duan Muqing pressed on, trying to force Xiaohua into a dead end. However, when Xiaohua fell into a dead end, he also fell into a dead end in Gong Shu Yiming's heart. His various schemes aroused Gong Shu Yiming's suspicion of his past actions. Since that is the case, Xiaohua muttered, turned to look at Mo Jianli and said, Jianli, help me make an oath. I have a new idea. I will change your master. Ah! Mo Jianli was stunned. He did not understand what Xiaohua meant. However, Mo Jianli was a straightforward man. Since he felt that Xiaohua's temper was good, he did not care about Xiaohua's cultivation level. He raised his hand and said, okay, young Master Duanmu, please. You. Seeing that Xiaohua not only refused to strike his palm to make an oath, but also let a mere scholar disciple take action on his behalf, he was so angry that his face had already turned green. This was really a kind of naked humiliation. You're really going too far. Good. Since you dare to make an oath with me, then remember the fight. Gritting her teeth, Duan Muqing raised her hand and hit Mo Jianli's palm. She said, in the fight, there is no need to talk about life and death. Mo Jianli was used to seeing the faces of aristocratic disciples. He said coldly, isn't it just a life? If you have the ability, then come and take it. Chapter 4478. Good. Gong Shui Xine at the side clapped, looking at Mo Jianli and praising, as expected, there are great scholars everywhere. I didn't think that not only is Taoist Xiao so heroic, even the cultivators he befriends are more forthright than some of the aristocratic family disciples. Duan Muqing gritted his teeth and looked at Gong Shui Xine, but did not dare to say a word. He turned to Gong Shu Yiming and said softly, Miss Yiming, after the battle to bury the hatchet, I will give you an explanation. This matter is definitely not what Xiaohua said. A female cultivator's view of a person changed in an instant. Now Gong Shu Yiming looked at Duan Muqing with a faint sense of unfamiliarity. She smiled. Actually, it doesn't matter, the words doesn't matter, was more painful than a sword stabbing into Duan Muqing's heart. He forced a smile and looked at Xiaohua. Taoist Xiao, I will see you at the battle to bury the hatchet. And I know. Xiaohua nodded. If Duanmu Liangsheng can come, that would be the best. Liangsheng did not come to Thousand Demons Sacred Realm. I have disappointed Taoist Xiao. Duan Muqing smiled and nodded at Gong Shu Yiming before turning to leave. But Xiaohua's words almost made him fall, and I know. You have many granduncles, it doesn't matter who comes. Seeing Duan Muqing leave in a sorry state, Gong Shui Xine felt a little disappointed. She looked at Xiaohua apologetically. Xiaohua, I am sorry I dragged you into this. I didn't expect you to have a grudge with him. Not bad. Xiaohua smiled. You have changed a lot in 200 years. If it was you in the past, you would not have said this. Che? Gong Shui Exine rolled her eyes at Xiao Hua. You think you are the only one who did not waste your life? Gong Shui Exine could not help but cover her mouth and laugh. Her eyes looked at Gong Shu Yiming and Gong Shu Jingyi, revealing more coquettishness. Gong Shu Jingyi couldn't help but laugh. He knew that Gong Shui Exine had always been arrogant. Not to mention the ordinary disciples, even the famous female disciples of the 4 clans weren't worthy of her attention. And today Gong Shui Exine's attitude towards Xiao Hua was definitely something that Gong Shu Jingyi had never seen before. This didn't allow him to not think about it. Gong Shu Jingyi looked at Gong Shu Yiming's excited expression and Gong Shui Exine's shy expression. He smiled slightly and said, "Little friend Xiao, you probably don't know about the battle to bury the hatchet before the various clans entered the Star Moon Palace, right?" Xiao Hua narrowed his eyes and looked at Gong Shu Jingyi thoughtfully. He then nodded and said, "Immortal friend is right. This Xiao is not a disciple of an aristocratic family, so how could I know the reason for this battle? However, from what Duan Muqing said, it should be a bet between the aristocratic clans to settle their grudges in Jai Xing Lu." Gong Shu Jingyi heard that Xiao Hua didn't call him senior and unconsciously frowned. Then, he looked at Xiao Hua's vigilant expression and felt relieved. However, the more Xiao Hua acted like this, the more interested Gong Shu Jingyi was. Not to mention Gong Shui Exine's admiration for Xiao Hua. Just the previous dispute between Duan Muqing and Xiao Hua because of Gong Shu Yiming, and Gong Shu Yiming actually watched from the side and didn't say anything to stop it. Gong Shu Jingyi knew that Gong Shu Yiming might have some inconvenient reason for transmitting voice to him. Since Gong Shu Yiming was happy to see the weak Xiao Hua and the powerful Duanmu clan fight, then Gong Shu Yiming's meaning was obvious. Gong Shu Jingyi wouldn't let go of this opportunity to recruit Xiao Hua into the Gong Shu clan. After all, a formation master stronger than Gong Shui Exine, even if his cultivation wasn't high to the Gong Shu clan, he was very precious. Therefore, although Gong Shu Jingyi was unhappy, he was still very approachable and said, "Little friend is right. However, this bet is a little different from the usual. The reason for this bet is actually very simple. Because the Star Moon Palace is an ancient relic, all the clans of the hidden immortal continent want to get a share of the profits. And the grudges between the clan's disciples naturally can't be severed. So in order to prevent the grudges of the hidden immortal continent from being brought to the Star Moon Palace, all the clans discussed to have a bet before entering the Star Moon Palace. Although this bet can't wipe out all the grudges, it can at least make people feel that there is some balance. Maybe they can get along peacefully in the Star Moon Palace and not cause trouble for everyone." Xiao Hua smiled and said, "Fellow Immortal already said that grudges can't be severed. How could it be resolved with a bet to bury the hatchet?" "Haha, of course this is the original intention." Gong Shu Jingyi smiled and said, after a few times, all the clans also felt that this was inappropriate. But, the night is long and there is no mood to sleep. Instead of waiting for the Star Moon Palace to open in Star Picking Tower, why not find some fun to bet? So it's like this. Xiao Hua nodded. In that case it makes sense. But, when Gong Shu Jingyi heard this, he immediately stopped smiling and said word by word, "This bet to wipe out all the grudges is real. Every disciple of the clans will not be merciful. Even the elders of the clans will form a group of judges to judge every bet. So little friend Xiao, you can't let your guard down." "Granduncle?" Gong Shui Exine hurriedly asked. Xiao Hua dealing with that Duanmu Qing is of course no problem, but the Duanmu clan has a lot of experts. Any disciple of the 6th level of essence power will not be easy for Xiao Hua to resist. Gong Shu Jingyi glanced at Xiao Hua and said, "According to what I know, the leader of the Duanmu clan is Duanmu Lianheng. He is famous for his bad temper. That year in Longevity Town, all the clans were watching and no one made a move. When Duanmu Lianheng arrived, he punched Buddha Sex Ci Mei until her expression changed and ordered the Longevity Town's Buddha to retreat. When Duanmu Lianheng retreated, he was blocked by Manjushri Bodhisattva, who had just attained nirvana. However, seeing Duanmu Lianheng in this state, Dongfang Zhongliang of the Dongfang family blocked Manjushri Bodhisattva with his sword. From this, it can be seen that if little friend Xiao wants to bet with the Duanmu clan, I'm afraid." Gong Shu Jingyi stopped. Gong Shu Yiming smiled and said, "Granduncle, with you here, with my Gong Shu clan here, How can Taoist Xiao be at a disadvantage? Gongshu Jingyi smiled and said, I'm naturally not afraid of Duanmu Lianheng, but I don't have a good reason. Granduncle, you're wrong again. Gongshu Yiming hurriedly said, Taoist Xiao is proficient in formations and thunder techniques. This junior and Exine can't compare to him. If this kind of person is used by my Gongshu clan, wouldn't Granduncle have a good reason? This depends on little friend Zhao's opinion. Gongshu Jingyi looked at Xiao Hua meaningfully and said, maybe he'll be a guest or have some marriage. Little friend Zhao's strength may not be enough to be a guest, but in terms of marriage it's possible. Hearing about marriage, Gongshu Yiming slightly raised his elbow and touched Gongshu Exine. Gongshu Exine was stunned and suddenly blushed. She hurriedly waved her hand and said, Granduncle, I'm afraid this won't work. I'm not familiar with Xiao Hua. Exine, Granduncle didn't seem to be talking about you. Gongshu Yiming smiled and said, why are you so anxious? Gongshu Exine, who was always proud and arrogant, stuttered, not knowing how to answer. She really respected Xiao Hua, but to talk about love it seemed too early to talk about it. Actually, you don't have to take it seriously. You and Taoist Xiao first put on a show, give Granduncle an excuse, and deceive the Duanmu clan. Gongshu Yiming suggested, after this, who will know about this? But what if the fake becomes real? Gongshu Exine was a bit sad. Looking pitifully at Xiao Hua and said, Xiao Hua, if I agree, you won't pester me like that Duanmu Qing, right? Looking at Gongshu Exine, who had a high cultivation in formations, but was ignorant of the ways of the world, and even spoke like a sinner, Xiao Hua smiled and said, many thanks. I won't make things difficult for you. Not at all, not at all. Gongshu Yiming smiled and said, little sister Exine often talks about Taoist Xiao in front of me. She really respects you, but she doesn't understand what this means? How come I don't know? Gongshu Exine looked at Gongshu Yiming with shame and anger. I just feel that Xiao Hua is powerful, I don't feel anything else. That day Gusucho Di also said the same. There were many Gongshu clan disciples in the pavilion. At this time a few girls wanted to come over. But when they heard Gongshu Exine mention Gusucho Di, they looked at each other and sat back, not knowing whether to laugh or cry. Gongshu Yiming and Gongshu Exine were very close. She didn't care about Gongshu Exine's shame and anger, and said, no matter what you think, if Xiao Hua has nothing to do with you, Granduncle can't fall out with the Duanmu clan. What do you say? Then he has something to do with him. Gongshu Exine looked at Xiao Hua, her face red, and said in a low voice, good. Gongshu Jingyi smiled and said, since Exine also agreed, I'll take over Xiao Hua's matter. Cough cough. Xiao Hua touched his nose, coughed bitterly and said with a smile, I appreciate everyone's good intentions. A mere Duanmu Lianheng isn't worth me retreating. Gongshu Jingyi frowned and said, little friend Xiao, now is not the time to act on impulse. A real man should know when to yield and when not to. Gongshu Exine also forced a smile and said, Xiao Hua, I know I don't understand things and always cause trouble. Today's matter originally had nothing to do with you, but I dragged you in, so you don't need to consider me. First pass this test. Chapter 4479. Good. Xiao Hua heard Gongshu Exine's words and clapped. I was hesitant before. To be honest, Exine, your formation skills are not bad, but you are too arrogant. You never put others in your eyes. You don't know what's important. You may not be strong in the future. Today, because of your words and your willingness to acknowledge your mistakes, I have decided to ask someone to take you in as a disciple and impart to you the Tao of array formations. Then Xiao Hua looked at Gongshu Yiming and said, and you, Lady Yiming, your 5-chi thunder cultivation is not bad. However, the cultivation method is not authentic. It even shows signs of deviating from the essence of a lightning cultivator. This has something to do with your character. You can also consider it. If you have any ideas, you can come find me with Exine after we reach Star Moon Palace. Xiao Hua, what are you talking about? Not to mention Gongshu Yiming, even Gongshu Exine was shocked. She looked at Xiao Hua and asked, Immortal friend Gongshu, thank you for your good intentions. Xiao Hua did not answer. He cupped his hands towards Gongshu Jingyi and turned to leave Gongshu family's pavilion. Mo Jianli also hurriedly cupped his hands and followed. Xiaohua, Xiaohua. Gongshui Exine did not seem to understand Xiaohua's words. She wanted to chase, but she still said, if you don't want to do this, I will talk to granduncle. How about asking him to find star-picking Lu? Stop. Gongshu Jingyi glared at Gongshui Exine and scolded. Granduncle. Gongshui Exine felt wronged. How can you let Duanmu family bully people like this? Granduncle. A Gongshu family disciple who was originally sitting at the side stood up and looked at Gongshu Jingyi and said softly, this Xiaohua seems not simple. Confucian families really attached great importance to etiquette. When Xiaohua and the others came over because Gongshu Jingyi didn't speak, the disciples of the Gongshu family didn't say a word. At this time when Xiaohua, an outsider, left, they all opened their mouths. A tall man nodded and said, that's right. If we did not see him expose Duanmu Qing's tricks, just hearing his last words, we would think he was a noble person. But since he was so calculative with Duanmu Qing, how can he be a noble person? He must have something to rely on. Question is, what does he have to rely on? Someone spoke again. Exine, the silk handkerchief that Xiaohua gave you. What is it? Gongshu Jingye thought of something and hurriedly asked. 5 brocade cloud painting array. Since they were all disciples of the Gongshu family, Gongshu Exine had nothing to hide. His Gongshu Jingye gasped and exclaimed, the Sun family of the Immortal Palace? Could it be that his backer is the Immortal Palace? If that's the case, no wonder he doesn't put my Gongshu family in his eyes. A disciple of the Gongshu family said self-righteously. That's right. The other female cultivator nodded sourly. Didn't he say it already? We need to find a master for Exine and Yiming. If it's not an immortal official from the Immortal Palace, who can be their master? There's no need for further discussion. Gongshu Jingye's face turns cold. No matter what this Xiaohua's background is, and what backing he has. As long as he doesn't have any conflict with my Gongshu family, it's fine. And the matter of the 5 brocade cloud painting, no one can leak it. Yes, we understand. The disciples of the Gongshu family all replied in a low voice. Also Qingping, go to Zhaixing Lu and see if they have any news about Xiaohua. Buy it at all costs. Gongshu Jingyi instructed another woman. Yes, disciple will go now. Gongshu Qingping replied and hurriedly left. After finishing the arrangements, Gongshu Jingyi looked at Gongshu Minghu and said, Minghu, come here. Let me ask you, how many cultivators did Zhaixing Lu select to enter the Star Moon Palace? Zhaixing Lu, did something happen? Gongshu Minghu hurriedly went forward to answer. Not mentioning Xiaohua, he brought Mo Jianli out of the pavilion, looked at the direction, and walked down another flight of stairs. Senior. Mo Jianli followed for a moment, looked left and right, and said in a low voice, Junior doesn't know what you're thinking. However, Junior sees that the Gongshu family doesn't have any evil intentions, and the Duanmu family is really powerful. If Senior doesn't use the Gongshu family, I'm afraid it won't be easy to deal with that Duanmu Qing. Oh, don't worry about that. Xiaohua smiled and said, I don't put that Duanmu Lianheng in my eyes. How can I not see through Duanmu Qing's provocation? If it wasn't for the Duanmu family's kill order, I wouldn't even care about him. Mo Jianli obviously didn't believe Xiaohua's words, but he could only nod and say, Senior, as long as you're confident. Oh right. Looking at Mo Jianli, Xiaohua said again, previously, I wanted to let my disciple take you in as a disciple, but then I thought of a good friend of mine who is also a Confucian cultivator. He's more powerful than my disciple. So why don't I let him teach you the real Confucian cultivation method? I didn't explain it to you at the Gongshu family. All right. Thank you, Senior, for your kind intentions. Mo Jianli hurriedly replied. Previously, Xiaohua had a premonition that he couldn't take in too many disciples, but when he saw Gongshui Exine and Gongshu Yiming's aptitudes, he was moved to take them in. As he pondered, he thought of Wenchu, the Thunderbolt Immortal, and the other clones. Although he could only take in 7 disciples, he had several clones. If nothing unexpected happened, each of his clones should be able to take in 7 disciples. Wenchu could teach Gongshu Yiming the 5 Qi Thunder, the Thunderbolt Immortal could teach Gongshui Exine the Tao of Array, Then Wen Chu could also teach Mo Jianli the 5 qi origin. But seeing Mo Jianli's absent-minded appearance, Xiaohua naturally understood what he was thinking. He smiled and was about to say something, when a faint clear light swept over. Then when this clear light touched Xiaohua and the others, it immediately dissipated. It was very strange. If Xiaohua wasn't a Mahayana realm cultivator, he wouldn't have noticed anything. Strange. Xiaohua was stunned. His eyes turned and he was puzzled. Who's following me? Could it be the Duanmu family? Could it be that they can't even wait for a challenge to bury the hatchet? Thinking about this, Xiaohua quietly released a strand of Buddhist consciousness. Buddhist consciousness was naturally more concealed than the light of clear sight. Not to mention that Xiaohua's avatar had already attained the Buddhist consciousness of Namo Maitreya Buddha. However, just as Xiaohua released his Buddhist consciousness, he saw a faintly discernible shadow floating behind him, quietly approaching. Damn it! Xiaohua frowned. He was really angry. His body moved slightly, blocking in front of Mo Jianli. He raised his left hand, condensed spiritual power in his hand, and calmly made a move. But at this time, to Xiaohua's surprise, the shadow left Xiaohua and Mo Jianli and flew to the other side of the corridor. The corridor of Zhaixing Lu was very large, more than 100 feet long. Xiaohua and Mo Jianli were on the left side, and the shadow was flying to the right side, more than 100 feet away from Xiaohua. It didn't have the intention to attack at all. Xiaohua also unconsciously condensed spiritual power in his hand, quietly waiting for the result. He didn't believe that in the 3 continents within 100 feet, there was anyone who had a greater advantage than him. Just as Xiaohua saw this and didn't release his spiritual power, what made Xiaohua even more surprised was that the shadow only hesitated for a moment, then immediately flew over. Of course, after flying over, it stopped, and the shadow became even dimmer, as if it was observing something. Senior. With Mo Jianli's abhijna, he naturally couldn't detect the appearance of this shadow. He was a little confused as to why Xiaohua suddenly blocked in front of him, and said curiously, Senior, I suddenly thought of something. Xiaohua smiled slightly, and said without turning his head, Come with me. As he spoke, Xiaohua lifted his feet and walked towards the stairs. Yes. Mo Jianli didn't suspect anything, nodded and followed. Xiaohua and Mo Jianli left, and the shadow also hurriedly left. However, after a while, Xiaohua's figure appeared in the corridor again. He looked at the place where the shadow disappeared, stroked his chin, and thought, Zhaixing Lu doesn't restrict flying, but most cultivators will not fly unless there's something urgent to show their respect for Zhaixing Lu. Not to mention that this cultivator is so stealthy. At this moment, the disciples of Zhaixing Lu seem to have something urgent to do, and they aren't at their shifts. Could it be that this cultivator did something unfavorable to Zhaixing Lu? However, after a while, Xiaohua denied this. After all, Zhaixing Lu belonged to Xingyu, and Xingyu was founded by Fairy Xingyu. Although Fairy Xingyu didn't reveal herself, she was still an immortal from the immortal realm, and her abhijna was self-evident. Who would dare to pluck the hair from a tiger's body? Since he had come to this conclusion, Xiaohua naturally turned around, wanting to turn back. However, at this moment another ray of clear light swept over. Just like before, it stopped when it saw Xiaohua, then retracted. Of course, Xiaohua was prepared this time. As if he didn't notice anything, he turned around and walked towards the stairs. Behind him, another shadow vaguely flew by, heading towards the corridor. When the shadow disappeared, Xiaohua smiled and thought to himself, shadows appear again and again. I'm afraid there's a problem. Even if this shadow has nothing to do with Zhaixing Lu, I still have to go take a look. Otherwise, wouldn't my understanding of the hand of karma be in vain? Thinking of this, Xiaohua leaped up and headed towards the end of the corridor. There was also a flight of stairs at the end of the corridor, but the stairs led upwards. At the same time, there was a bow that was shaped like a crescent moon. Xiaohua flew in front of the bow and scanned it with his divine perception. He had already sensed the aura of a defensive array on the bow. He pondered for a moment, and a light flashed around him. The appearance of a small nose and small eyes appeared, and he rushed towards the bow. Chapter 4480. Swoosh! A dual-colored cloud descended and shrouded Xiaohua's figure. Xiaohua's concealing technique was also revealed. Moreover, under the cloud, the jade pendant in Xiaohua's bosom shone with a strange brilliance. When this brilliance touched the cloud, it immediately left Xiaohua. Naturally, the cloud also disappeared. Looking again in front of Xiaohua, there was a small hall. Several Confucian cultivators at the 6th level of essence power were holding their respective imperial artifacts, standing there on guard, eyeing Xiaohua like a tiger eyeing its prey. Among them, a general with an average stature and bulging muscles all over his body whispered, "Who are you? What are you doing here?" "Me?" Xiaohua was taken aback. He didn't know how to answer. Moreover, he knew very well that this was a secret signal. How could he answer without a secret signal? However, looking at the Confucian cultivator at 6th grade origin Qi, Xiaohua sneered and replied, "This one is a good friend of the Star Moon Palace Master. I was just wandering around when I had nothing to do." Xiaohua originally wanted to say that he found this place a little strange, so he came over to take a look. However, before he could speak, the general spoke coldly. There was a hint of dissatisfaction in his voice as he said, "Why are you dawdling like this? Why aren't you coming over?" "Oh." Xiaohua was taken aback. He really didn't expect this sentence to be the so-called secret signal. These Confucian cultivators really keep up with the times. Of course, since the secret signal had been matched, he didn't say anything else. Bai Qingyu's experience had already told him that if he wanted to pretend, he had to pretend until the end. Otherwise, he wouldn't be able to see the truth if he gave up halfway. Although Bai Qingyu, Heaven Concealing Ridge, and Ancient Bell Mountain already belonged to the Fortune Gate, he still didn't know who was the real mastermind behind the scenes. Even the 3 great sages of the Great Sage Hall didn't know. Therefore, Xiaohua didn't say anything and walked into the hall. This hall was similar to the one Xiaohua had seen before. There was nothing special about it. However, there were many more Gongshu family disciples inside the hall. Moreover, everyone was sitting with their heads down and didn't talk to others. When Xiaohua walked in, no one raised their heads to look at him. Therefore, Xiaohua looked around and found a place where there weren't many people and casually sat down. He also slightly lowered his head and only released his Buddhist sense to look at the situation around him. What surprised Xiaohua was that the cultivators in this hall were all Confucian cultivators, and they were all above the great Grandmaster realm. Many of the cultivators were even wearing things that concealed their cultivation base. Xiaohua's cultivation base was extraordinary, otherwise, he wouldn't have been able to see through it. This is getting more and more interesting. Seeing the situation before his eyes, how could Xiaohua not know that he was already in a very delicate situation? Moreover, he had coincidentally uncovered a mysterious veil. He was looking forward to seeing what was behind the veil. Unfortunately, Xiaohua was still overthinking things. In less than half a cup of tea's time, the military generals who had been guarding the door earlier walked in, looked around and said, "Today's gathering was rushed, so not many people came. Let's not talk about anything else. I just want to tell everyone that the previous plan will be put on hold for now. If there is no new information, everyone should not take any action for now. Just enter the Star Moon Palace and do your own things." "I have a question." Without waiting for the military general to finish speaking, a cultivator called out coldly, "Fellow immortal, please speak." The military general raised his hand and pointed. "I believe that all of you are like me, fellow immortals, and have put in a lot of effort for today. We naturally entered the Star Moon Palace for one purpose, but towards the star-picking tower." "Shut up." Without waiting for the cultivator to finish speaking, the military general roared angrily. A tricolored ball of light condensed in his hand, and he shouted, "Don't tell me you don't know the taboo?" Yes, I know I was wrong." The cultivator hurriedly apologized and said, "I just wanted to say that we have been preparing for a long time, and now that we have a clue, why did we suddenly give up?" The military general was obviously stunned. He didn't expect someone to ask. He then turned to look at another cultivator. That cultivator pondered for a moment before saying, "Actually, this is also a secret that you don't need to know. However, considering that all of you have made a lot of preparations, we may have a chance in the future. Thus, Master told me to tell you that the current situation is a little different. This is because the Star Moon Palace Lord has appeared today and brought back 2 cultivators of unknown origins. Furthermore, one of them is a human Grand Ascension stage cultivator. This is not something that we can deal with. Thus our plan will be postponed. A human Grand Ascension stage cultivator? How is that possible? The military general exclaimed. I've never heard of a human Grand Ascension stage cultivator in the Tao sect. I don't care if you believe it or not, but I do. The cultivator said in an indifferent voice. This is what Master told us to do. You can all disperse. Disperse. The military general faltered upon hearing this. We're going to disperse just like that? That's right, what else can we do? Do you want a human Grand Ascension stage cultivator to kill you with a single slap? The cultivator chuckled. Hurry up and leave. Even today's gathering was decided after much deliberation by Master. He wants to minimize your losses. The Star Moon Palace's Palace Lord is only a 7th grade Origin Chi cultivator. How can we not be a match for her? The military general exclaimed. That human Grand Ascension stage cultivator? Perhaps he's just passing by. Shut up. The cultivator roared. Master will think about this matter. It's not up to you to speak. Hurry up and leave. If the Star Moon Palace finds out about this, we'll all be dead. Humph, if you knew something was wrong, you should have stayed outside Star Plucking Tower. One of the cultivators muttered. Cut the crap. Hurry up and disperse. Another cultivator scolded in a low voice. Do you know what it means by what's real is fake and what's fake is real? I know what it means by the most dangerous place is the safest place. The cultivator muttered in a low voice before getting up and walking toward a curved outline of a small door not far away. Seeing that the cultivator had left, no one said anything else. They all got up and slowly made their way toward the small door. Although Xiaohua hadn't been here for a long time, from these few short sentences, Xiaohua learned a lot. As he watched everyone leave, he looked at the cultivator standing next to him and muttered in his heart. If he were to make a move now, he would definitely be able to capture these cultivators and perhaps find out the truth. However, when he thought of Fairy Xingyu's stingy attitude, Xiaohua curled his lips slightly. Damn it, they seem to be after Star Moon or Star Plucking Tower. Moreover, it's easy to tell that the Tower Master of Star Plucking Tower is among them. Why am I getting involved? Fairy Xingyu has already made it clear that she doesn't intend to leave Star Moon to me in the future. Why should I meddle in other people's business? I just need to do a good job for the Merchant Alliance. If an immortal from the immortal world can make Star Moon into something like this, why can't I, a human Grand Ascension stage cultivator, do the same? While Xiaohua was thinking, many cultivators had already left. Xiaohua looked again and saw that several cultivators were already looking at him. He shrugged, blinked his eyes with Zhang Xiaohua's appearance, turned around and followed the crowd through the small door. Outside the small door was another corridor. Xiaohua didn't see any other cultivators nearby. He was certain that this small door must be a defensive array of Star Plucking Tower. If it weren't for Star Plucking Tower's spies, they wouldn't have been able to obtain such convenience. However, what did this have to do with Xiaohua? Xiaohua smiled as if he had just watched a farce. He recovered his appearance and casually walked in a certain direction. The floors of Star Plucking Tower were the same as those seen outside. After passing through this small door, Xiaohua couldn't tell which floor he was on. However, he knew that Suji and Fairy Xingyu must be on the highest floor. So he walked up the stairs when he saw them. After walking through 2 pavilions before Xiaohua could figure out which floor he was on, he heard a slightly oppressive voice above his head say, "There's no need to talk about this anymore. I've already made up my mind. If Murong Hui has any objections, feel free to look for me after we reach Star Moon Palace." Sweat. When Xiaohua heard this familiar voice, he immediately stood on the stairs and refused to move. Damn it, is this really the rhythm of my ascension? It's just Star Moon Palace, but acquaintances are appearing one after another. If it's not to settle the karma, why would they all appear here? Xiaohua stood there and waited quietly. Sure enough, after a few breaths, a graceful figure appeared in front of him. Wasn't it Murong Songyun? Murong Songyun was as graceful as before, but there was a trace of coldness between her beautiful eyebrows. Behind her, there were a few men and women who were around the 5th level of origin energy. Although their cultivation was similar to Murong Songyun's, they all lowered their heads and listened to Murong Songyun's reprimand. When Murong Songyun raised her head, She saw Xiaohua standing there with a faint smile on his face. At first, she was stunned. Then her beautiful eyes instantly clouded over. Her body stiffened as she stared at Xiaohua, unable to say a single word. Immortal friend Murong. When Xiaohua saw Murong Songyun's reaction, his heart trembled. He smiled and asked, "We haven't seen each other for many years. How are you?" You. Murong Songyun stared at Xiaohua and breathed with all her might. Her already towering chest heaved up and down. After a moment she took a deep breath. Rather than saying that she couldn't breathe properly, it would be better to say that she was inhaling the moisture in her eyes. Her mouth slightly stuttered as she asked, Are you really still alive?" Of course." Xiaohua sighed and nodded. "Even if the Chu family dies, this Xiao won't die." "Chu family." Murong Songyun smiled. That smile was like 100 flowers blooming. "I would rather the Chu family die. I don't want." Murong Songyun looked around and said with a stunned expression, "Go and wait. Do as I say." "Yes, this subordinate understands." The few Confucian cultivators looked at Xiaohua in astonishment. They lowered their heads and quickened their pace. They rushed past Xiaohua and walked down the stairs. Chapter 4481. Murong Songyun walked in front of Xiaohua in a few steps, but the closer she got, the smaller her steps, as if she didn't dare to close the distance between them. Her eyes almost never left Xiaohua's face. When she got closer, she said, "Xiaohua, you really scared me to death. What happened that day? In order to save me, you fell from the sword diagram. I also wanted to rush down, but I was entangled by that damn bald donkey. I thought since you died, I also didn't want to live alone. I wanted to die together with that damn bald donkey." At this time, 14th uncle finally arrived and solved my dangerous situation. But when I went to look for you again, there was no trace of you. Speaking to here, Murong Songyun stopped. His eyes flashed with extraordinary splendor, and his tone carried joy as he said, "I originally thought you had already fallen in the demon god's blood. But who would have thought before I could even return to the clan, I would receive the abnormality of the demon god's blood?" I really don't know how to describe the surprise at that time. "Xiaohua, you are truly a person who is good at creating miracles. I didn't dare to believe that you could actually survive in the God-Devil blood pool, and I didn't dare to believe that you were actually farming there after the God-Devil blood pool disappeared. Did you know? In these 200 years, I have been to the God-Devil blood pool several times and personally saw the drastic changes there. Oh no, that place is no longer called the God-Devil blood pool, but Xiao country. A country that is not a country of Confucian cultivators, nor a country of Taoism. A country that is named after a Taoist cultivator that they worship. A country that is bigger than all the countries in the hidden immortal continent. This country doesn't have a ruler, nor does it have any authority. Because other than the Taoist cultivator that is like a god in their hearts, there is no one else in the entire hidden immortal continent that can be the ruler of this country. Xiaohua touched his nose and bitterly smiled. "Miss Murong, there is no need to be so emotional. This Xiao only sowed some rice seeds there. Moreover, there is also the contribution of the literary saints of the various clans. This Zhao's actions are really insignificant. This might be insignificant in your eyes, and even in the eyes of other cultivators, it is merely a senseless act. But in the eyes of the hundreds of millions of citizens of Xiao Kingdom, what you have done is a miracle." Murong Songyun smiled and said, "You can imagine that the entire 9 provinces of the hidden immortal continent is a disaster. Thousands of li around the Xiao Empire is filled with rice fields. Every citizen who can settle down in the Xiao Empire has no worries about food or clothing. This Xiao Empire is the immortal world in the eyes of all mortals. I have been to Xiao Empire several times in the past few hundred years, and witnessed the prosperity of Xiao Empire with my own eyes. Today, Xiao Empire has already become a rare paradise in the entire hidden immortal continent." Hearing Murong Songyun's words, Xiaohua also smiled. Back then, he thought that if he didn't plant grain in such a large swamp, it would become a real swamp in the future. Leaving it there would be a waste. That was why he let the disciples farm with him. But he didn't expect that this matter would cause such a huge commotion under the influence of the literary saints of the various aristocratic families. It truly had a kind of unparalleled spirit of securing millions of acres of fertile land and protecting the hungry people of the world. Don't do small deeds without doing them. This saying is indeed correct. Xiaohua nodded. This small kindness can sometimes become great kindness. At that time this Xiao had never thought that there would be such a huge commotion. Oh, Miss Murong, that day, this Xiao was knocked unconscious by the heavenly king of the Buddhist sect into the demonic god blood swamp. When I woke up, not only was the demonic god blood swamp gone, there was only a large swamp. Even the disciples of the Chu family, Miss Murong, and the others were gone. This Xiao also doesn't know what happened in the demonic god blood swamp. If possible, can Miss Murong tell this Xiao what happened that day? Oh. Murong Songyun was slightly taken aback and said curiously, "Your words are a bit strange. These things were taboo back then and no one would say a word about it. But since the sutra seeking extreme bliss is about to end, the filth between us Confucian cultivators and the Buddhist sect has long disappeared. The truth of the demonic god blood swamp has spread quite a bit in the hidden immortal continent. Could it be that you don't know?" Xiaohua said with a smile, "It's precisely because there are too many rumors that this Xiao has no way to judge. That's why I want to hear from you." He. Murong Songyun said with a smile, "If you call me Jin Xiao and don't call me Miss Murong, I will tell you. Otherwise, don't even think about it." All right. Xiaohua's heart slightly swayed as he said, "Isn't it just Jin Xiao? Even if I have to call you Jin Xiao a million times, I am willing." Murong Songyun's face slightly reddened. She bit her lips and said softly, "This is what you said. From now on call me Jin Xiao once a day." As she spoke, Murong Songyun looked down the stairs and said softly, "This time, I followed 7th granduncle to Zhaixing Lu because I wanted to take a look at the Star Moon Palace. Come with me to see 7th granduncle. He appreciates you. Along the way, I will tell you everything that happened in the Divine Devil blood pool." This? Xiaohua hesitated for a moment, but after a moment he felt relieved. After all, he had already come to Zhaixing Lu, so he would definitely meet Murong Jiang. Previously, he had hoped to obtain the protection of the Murong family and Murong Jiang had also agreed. Today, he would be able to understand everything. Seeing Xiaohua hesitate, Murong Songyun's eyes flashed with apprehension. When Xiaohua spoke, he said, "All right, bring me there. I also want to see him." Murong Songyun's face glowed. He seemed to be very happy and almost jumped up. He said, "Let's go. 7th granduncle will definitely be very happy to see you." Immediately, Murong Songyun brought Xiaohua down the stairs. As they walked, he told Xiaohua what happened after he fell into the Divine Devil blood pool. Actually, after Xiaohua fell into the Divine Devil blood pool, the Chu family's patriarch and elders took action. Murong Songyun didn't hold on for too long and left the sword diagram. Most of what Murong Songyun said was from the sage of literature, Murong Jun. Not sure if it was because Murong Songyun didn't know that Murong Jun obtained information about the Divine Devil puppet or because he didn't want to tell Xiaohua, but Murong Songyun only said that when the sage of literature took action and killed the heavenly king of Buddhism, the Divine Devil blood pool suddenly changed and stopped. At this time, Murong Songyun brought Xiaohua to the front of a pavilion. Xiaohua naturally didn't ask. He slightly nodded and sighed. "I didn't expect that after I fainted so many things would happen. If the sage of literature didn't come, you and the Chu family's disciples would have fallen in the Divine Devil blood pool." Murong Songyun shook his head and said, "Xiaohua, you are wrong. In fact, all of this had been arranged in advance. I and the other disciples also knew about it. We also knew that we were bait. But we didn't expect the Buddhist sect's methods to be so ruthless. They actually use some soul cultivators' transportation channel. So, you have to remember, on the hidden immortal continent the power of the various families is the real big hand behind the scenes. Even the high and mighty immortal palace isn't." "Yes." Xiaohua sighed, "Otherwise, why would I want to shelter under the Murong family's power and avoid the immortal palace's attack?" Murong Songyun laughed again. He reached out and pulled Xiaohua's sleeve. "You have already done what you promised 7th uncle. I presume he has nothing else to say, right?" Xiaohua opened his mouth. He wanted to explain something, but seeing Murong Songyun's smiling face, he swallowed his words. The Murong family's pavilion was similar to the Gongshu family's, but there weren't many people in the pavilion. Aside from a few men and women with similar cultivation to Murong Tsongyun standing around the pavilion, there was a very proud young man sitting on a chair. He was holding a yellow book and carefully reading it. This young man was Murong Jiang, whom Xiaohua met at the god-demon blood pool. Before the fiend god blood pool, Xiaohua was unable to see through Murong Jiang's strength. 200 years later, Xiaohua was able to clearly see through Murong Jiang's strength. This Murong Jiang was already a martial ancestor at the peak of the 7th level of origin energy, only one step away from stepping into the realm of literary saint. Presumably, Murong Jiang was the person the Murong family wanted to enter Star Moon Palace, right? Murong Jiang didn't even raise his head as he pulled Xiaohua into the pavilion. His eyes were fixed on the book, unable to move. Seventh uncle, Murong Tsongyun excitedly called out, "Look who's here." And Murong Jiang responded, but his right index finger was on his lips again. He dipped it in his saliva and flipped through the book, reading it with relish. "Quick!" Murong Tsongyun pulled Xiaohua and secretly said, "Quick, pay your respects to 7th uncle. He will definitely keep his promise." Xiaohua bitterly smiled. He slightly raised his hand and was just about to open his mouth when he saw Murong Jiang waving his hand and blocking his way. Murong Jiang lightly said, "Yun-er, what promise did granduncle give you?" As he spoke, the corners of Murong Jiang's eyes twitched. He glanced at Murong Tsongyun and Xiaohua, and then his gaze fell onto the book. However, just as his gaze touched the book, his entire body suddenly went still, as if he had thought of something. He raised his head, and his gaze fell onto Xiaohua like lightning. With a voice of disbelief he said, "Xiaohua? How come it's you?" "Yes, it's me." Xiaohua smiled and said, "We haven't seen each other for 200 years. Immortal friend Murong is still as elegant as before." "Immortal friend Murong?" Murong Tsongyun's face slightly changed when he heard Xiaohua's address. He hurriedly pulled Xiaohua's arm, hinting him to change the way he addressed him. Murong Jiang looked at Xiaohua and seemed to understand something. He smiled and said, "Xiaohua, this old man really didn't expect you to be able to come back alive from the divine devil blood swamp. Presumably, when Yun-er sees you, she will mention the matter this old man promised you. This old man understands Yun-er's thoughts. She has mentioned this matter many times in the past 200 years, but you have never come to my Murong family. Since we met in the Thousand Devils Sacred Realm Star Picking Tower, this old man will be frank with you. This old man is a man of his word. If you are willing to be my Murong family's guest elder, this old man will immediately agree. Moreover, I will immediately report this matter to the family through Star Picking Tower. When we come out of Star Moon Palace and return to the family, we will officially let you join my Murong family." Chapter 4482. Speaking up to hear, Murong Jiang looked at Murong Tsongyun, who had lowered her head in silence, and lovingly said, "This way, one of Yun-er's worries will be resolved." "7th uncle." Murong Tsongyun's head lowered even more. Even her neck seemed a bit red. Her voice was as low as a mosquito's flapping wings as she said, "Senior, why are you talking so much today? Haha, this old man is very happy today." Murong Jiang laughed, then pointed at Xiaohua and said, "That day at the demonic god's blood pool, this old man was optimistic about Xiaohua, so I handed you over to him. Moreover, he didn't disappoint this old man. For you, he was shot down by the Buddhist sect's protector. His survival is naturally the will of the heavens, and also my Murong family's fortune." Seeing Xiaohua again today, this old man is also very happy. As long as he agrees, this old man will immediately hold a banquet to celebrate his success, and also congratulate him in advance for joining my Murong family. And 7th uncle is very considerate. Boy, thank you. Although Murong Tsongyun was shy, she still used her arm to nudge Xiaohua and said, "Xiaohua, why aren't you thanking 7th uncle?" Xiaohua's eyes slightly turned, and a meaningful smile appeared on his face. He replied, "Fellow Taoist Murong still remembers the promise from 200 years ago. This Xiao is very gratified. This Xiao came here today precisely for this matter. Although this Xiao doesn't plan to be under the protection of any family, this Xiao still wants to thank fellow Taoists for giving this Xiao that opportunity." When Murong Tsongyun heard this, the redness on her face immediately disappeared, and was replaced by a deathly pale face. Her eyes were filled with panic, like the petals on a branch falling down. Although Xiaohua had seen through a lot, he still didn't dare to look straight into her eyes. Murong Songyun seemed to be crying blood as she asked in a low voice, "Darling Xiao, is it because this concubine didn't do well? Is it because this concubine hasn't been looking for you these days? You should know that I already told you everything on the sword diagram in the God-Devil blood pool. I have some difficulties that I can't tell you about. I've already sacrificed a lot for a few opportunities. After I returned from the God-Devil blood pool, I completed the mission given to me by the clan. Only then did I get what I wanted. Over the years, I've been working hard to do things for the clan. Although I've been thinking about you, I've also been planning for the future. Alas." Xiaohua gave a slight sigh. He had never been ruthless towards female cultivators. Even if there were times when he felt that this female cultivator was deceiving him, he was not willing to say it out loud. Murong Jiang looked at Murong Songyun's appearance, and his face revealed a look of love. He looked at Xiaohua and angrily said, "Xiaohua, did you see that? Which woman in my Murong family isn't rare? And Yuner is the most outstanding one among these women. You don't know how much virtue you have accumulated in your previous life to gain her favor. If you dare to make her angry, this old man will definitely not forgive you." Seventh granduncle. Murong Songyun sobbed and said, "This may be Xiaohua's misunderstanding. Please don't blame him. Wait until he knows everything that the boy has done. He will definitely forgive the boy." "Alas, you still want to wait for the future?" Murong Jiang sighed and said, "You know, a moment's mistake may be a lifetime's mistake. This old man was also young. How can I let you repeat my mistakes?" After saying that, Murong Jiang's imposing aura flourished. The true qi around his body swayed like an awakened lion. He roared and pounced towards Xiaohua. A deafening voice sounded in Xiaohua's ear. "Do you know how much Yuner has done for you? If you don't give Yuner an answer today, this old man will definitely not forgive you." Xiaohua slightly shook his head. He looked at Murong Jiang's true qi and didn't do anything. He just said, "Why do you have to do this? Since we already have a good impression of each other, there's no need to expose it." Although Xiaohua didn't make a move, his entire body was still standing there like an immovable wisdom king. Not only was his entire body's magical power restrained, there wasn't any flaw. Even his eyes were clear, there wasn't a trace of fear in them. Compared to 200 years ago when he punched Xiaohua into the ground, there was a world of difference. Murong Jiang's heart was greatly alarmed. His Zhan Qi was originally probing and intimidating, but it couldn't help but be mixed with killing intent. He slightly raised his right hand. Just as Murong Jiang's killing intent appeared, Xiaohua's expression slightly changed. His eyes that were like a clear stream began to set off small waves. Seventh granduncle. Just when Murong Jiang was in a bit of a dilemma, Murong Songyun hastily threw himself in front of Xiaohua and blocked Xiaohua behind him. Then he raised his swan-like neck and resolutely said, "You can't blame Xiaohua for this matter, and you can't force him. If he doesn't want to, there will be a knot in his heart. Even if he makes the boy happy for a while, he will never let the boy be happy for a lifetime. You feel that Xiaohua has hurt your face. If you want to hurt him, you can do it. Boy is willing to be Xiaohua's scapegoat." Murong Jiang narrowed his eyes and looked at Xiaohua. He could tell that Xiaohua was only at the 5th level of origin energy. He wasn't much different from the Xiaohua he saw at the blood pool of gods and devils. Murong Jiang was sure that he could kill Xiaohua in one strike, just like before. However, there was a kind of vigilance in his heart. The Xiaohua in front of him was very dangerous. If he didn't succeed with this strike, it would bring about consequences that he couldn't bear. Seeing Murong Songyun blocking his right hand and giving him a way out, Murong Jiang sternly said, "All right, Yuner. Since you have pleaded for leniency, this old man won't make things too difficult for Xiaohua. Moreover, this old man can give him a period of time to consider. If he still doesn't reply after the Star Moon Palace, then this old man won't let him take a single step into my Murong family." "Yes, thank you, 7th granduncle." Murong Songyun hurriedly expressed his thanks. With a distressed expression, he turned to Xiaohua and said, "Xiaohua, I don't know how to explain it to you. If you want to ask something, as long as it doesn't involve my Murong family's secrets, I can answer." I only ask that you can understand my heart. I forget it. Xiaohua sighed and shook his head. This Xiao was wrong. The past is the past. If I want to use the past to look at the present, how can it not be a joke? If you still want to see this Xiao in the future, then don't do these meaningless things. This Xiao will take his leave. After saying this, Xiaohua didn't say anything else and turned around to leave. Xiaohua, Xiaohua. Murong Songyun turned around and chased after him. Seeing Xiaohua's figure floating out of the pavilion, his face was filled with disappointment and surprise. Seventh granduncle. Murong Songyun stopped and turned to look at Murong Jiang. He whispered, "Do you think? You all go out first, don't let anyone else in." Without waiting for Murong Songyun to finish, Murong Jiang interrupted him and said to the other Murong family disciples in the pavilion, "Yes." Several Murong family disciples answered and hurriedly left. At this time Murong Jiang asked, "Yuner, where did you meet Xiaohua?" "Just a moment ago, the boy came out of the Zhangsun family." Murong Songyun explained the situation of meeting Xiaohua, and then asked, "Seventh granduncle." The boy felt that Xiaohua seemed to have noticed something. "It's not just noticed something," Murong Jiang coldly said. "From his tone you still don't know? He's already a bit wary of our Murong family." The boy also didn't think. Murong Songyun said with some regret. The boy did something wrong that made him suspicious. He's a character that the people of Shao country worship as a god. If our Murong family can win him over, it will certainly be of great use to our Murong family's development. "You're too idealistic," Murong Jiang faintly replied. The so-called Shao country is nothing more than an ideal place for the secular people. In the eyes of cultivators like us, it's just a chicken or a pottery dog, not worth mentioning. If it weren't for the fact that the scholars of several families mentioned Shao country before, all the families would have some scruples about it. I'm afraid that Shao country would have already been invaded by the nearby Confucian country. This Xiaohua, if he doesn't go to Shao country, not only will the Immortal Palace send a crusade, but the nearby Confucian country will also send troops. He will only die. Shao country will only perish. Yes, Murong Songyun nodded. The boy also knows this, so he wants to seize the opportunity to take down Shao country. Speaking up to hear, Murong Songyun was suddenly startled, his face somewhat pale, and anxiously said, "Seventh granduncle." The boy remembered, wasn't Xiaohua suppressed by a demon king? How could he suddenly appear here? He must have suspected it because of this matter. The boy had already told second granduncle when he received the news. Xiaohua is very strange. He actually didn't die after falling into the demon god's blood pool. There must be something fishy about him. If we can save him from the demon king. How is that possible? Murong Jiang coldly said. You think only you know the importance of Xiaohua and Shao country. The other families also know about it. But what kind of place is Bai Qingyu? Not to mention that the Demon King already has the strength of an 8th grade origin energy realm. If we want to save Xiaohua without a few scholars, it's impossible. But if the scholars make a move, it's a big taboo of the Great Sage Hall. Not to mention that Xiaohua can't be saved. Even the scholars might not be able to return. Moreover, Bai Qingyu is in the center of the Thousand Demons sacred realm. If we Confucian cultivators want to go in, without an organization like Zhai Xinglu who is very familiar with the Thousand Demons sacred realm, it's very difficult to not be discovered by the demons. So, for a mere Shao country, which family is willing to take such a big risk? Granduncle, the boy also thought about this at that time. Murong Songyun was still vexed. But the boy bumped into him too hastily. The boy didn't think about how the boy would answer if the Demon King asked why he didn't save him. So the boy simply pretended that he didn't know anything. Perhaps because of this matter the Demon King saw something? Chapter 4483. That's only one of the reasons. Murong Jiang thought for a bit and nodded. Not only that, you might be too hasty. I'm also a bit impatient. Secondly, I feel that Xiaohua is different from before. I don't have the confidence to kill him. Murong Song shook his head. How is that possible? Boy has made great progress in 200 years. Could it be that he's one level higher than Boy? Only Xiaohua himself knows about this. Murong Jiang dragged out his voice and said, thirdly, Wasn't he suppressed by Qingyu's Demon King? How could he suddenly appear here? After we left the hidden immortal continent, we are no longer well informed. I'm afraid we don't know what happened in the Thousand Demons' sacred realm. Damn it! Murong Songyun cursed. Boy knows. Some family must have reached an agreement with the Great Sage Temple and rescued Xiao Hua. That's why he has the courage to talk to seventh granduncle. And it's because that family is here that Xiao Hua came here. Murong Jiang was stunned again and nodded. Yes, it must be so. Those who can talk to the Great Sage Temple are either first-class families or second-class families. The four great families are not in Jiaxing Lu, so they can only be first-class families. That day in the God-Devil Blood Pool, Gongshu, Duanmu, Huangfu, Zhangsun, Yuan Kong and Meng families were there. I'm afraid it's one of them. Boy, let's go out for a walk. Murong Songyun couldn't sit still and said, buy some information from Jiaxing Lu and see what happened in the Thousand Demons' sacred realm. And go. Murong Jiang sat back down and said, you don't have to take Xiao Hua too seriously. He is just a Dao sect cultivator. Even if he is cultivated to the 7th grade of Essence Qi, he is still a loner. He won't be able to achieve anything big. If he can join our Murong family, it'll be good for you. If he can't, he'll be your enemy in the future. Boy. Murong Songyun bit his lips and said, boy, I don't believe. I can't win him over. Be careful not to draw fire to yourself. Murong Jiang picked up the scroll he had put down earlier and reminded him. Do you still remember the matter of the star-picking tower in the Copper Pillar country? Since you've revealed the dragon bones to the East Sea Dragon Palace, don't act on your own initiative and show up at the auction. That time, Jiaxing Lu had almost found out about the Murong family. The patriarch has told you before that you can't be too headstrong. You should let go of what you should. Yes, thank you for your reminder, 7th granduncle. Murong Songyun was startled and hastily lowered his head to reply. Go and come back quickly. Murong Jiang said with a smile, the challenge will begin soon. I think there will be a lot of excitement waiting to be seen. Yes, the boy understands. Murong Songyun nodded and hurriedly left. When Xiao Hua came out from the Murong family's pavilion, a cold smile appeared on his face. Murong Songyun's guess wasn't wrong. Xiao Hua was indeed moved when she saw Murong Songyun, but after a few words Murong Songyun mentioned that she had gone to Xiao Empire a few times. Xiao Hua became suspicious. Since Murong Songyun was so concerned about her, how could he not know that she was suppressed by Qingyu's Monster King? Even Ao Zhantian and Jiaxing Zi knew that Murong Songyun had the Murong family behind him, so there was no reason for her not to know. Of course, if it was Gongshu Yisan, a woman who didn't know about worldly affairs and only cared about formations, perhaps even with the Gongshu family behind her, she wouldn't know that Xiao Hua was suppressed. However, Murong Songyun wanted to stand out in the Murong family, so how could she not care about the news of the 3 continents? How could she not know that Xiao Hua was suppressed? If Murong Songyun had mentioned Qingyu at that time, or even defended himself, Xiao Hua might not have turned hostile so quickly. However, Murong Songyun's cleverness backfired, and he wanted to play dumb until the end, which made Xiao Hua realize that Murong Songyun was acting right in front of her. Since she was suspicious, Xiao Hua thought about the battle at the blood pool of gods and demons and made many discoveries. Looking at the meeting at the stairs and Murong Jiang's behavior, Xiao Hua was even more certain that Murong Songyun wasn't as affectionate as he seemed on the surface. This affectionate side was like the sweet words of a female praying mantis, but behind it, there was a lot of cruelty and exploitation. Therefore, after telling Murong Jiang about the battle at the blood pool of gods and demons, Xiao Hua was ready to leave. Facing Murong Jiang's coercion, Xiao Hua could only sneer. In the end, Murong Jiang had tested Xiao Hua's strength at the blood pool of gods and demons. If Murong Jiang really wanted to fight, Xiao Hua didn't mind taking revenge and bullying the weak again. As for whether Murong Jiang could take a punch from Xiao Hua, that wasn't something Xiao Hua would consider. Xiao Hua walked to the stairs, and her face had already changed into Zhang Xiaohua's. This time, Xiao Hua didn't want to use her original face, even if she was beaten to death. She had only met Gongshu and Murong clan, but it had already made her so embarrassed. In the future, if she met other familiar cultivators, how should she address their elders? An unfamiliar 4th grade elemental energy cultivator wouldn't attract too much attention. Xiao Hua wandered around Jiaxing Lu for half a day, and also came across a few places to trade. But what he hoped for didn't happen. Now, most of the cultivators who came to Zhaixing Lu were preparing to enter Star Moon Palace. Who would pay attention to the bidding? Even the things prepared by Zhaixing Lu couldn't be seen in Xiaohua's eyes. Apart from feeling some of the liveliness unique to the human race, Xiaohua didn't seem to have gained anything. Seeing that it was boring, Xiaohua had the intention to withdraw, and prepared to return to the top floor to rest. At this time, she heard a Zhaixing Lu disciple who was only at the 3rd grade elemental energy say, "Seniors, this junior just received news that the challenge to bury the hatchet will begin after a meal. This auction will end here. If seniors still want to bid, wait until after the challenge to bury the hatchet, then come back here to bid." Haha. That Zhaixing Lu disciple had just finished speaking when a burly armament cultivator called out, "Great, there's another show to watch. Brother Mu, I remember that you have some grudges with Brother Qingfeng from the Kong clan. Could it be that you also want to bury the hatchet here?" Beside the armament cultivator was naturally another armament cultivator, but this armament cultivator was slightly short, and his face was also yellow. This Brother Mu smiled coldly and said, "The matter between me and Qingfeng is not worth mentioning. How can it be resolved in the challenge to bury the hatchet? Besides, I came to Bright Moon Palace this time to seek an opportunity. It was an opportunity that I fought for with great difficulty from the clan. How can I make trouble for myself before entering?" "That's true." The fat armament cultivator scratched his head and said with a smile, "If not for some grievances that are difficult to resolve, who would fight here? Forget it, let's go and take a look." Xiaohua was beside these 2 armament cultivators. He looked at these 2 Confucian cultivators whose strength was only at the upper middle of 5th grade essence force and muttered in his heart. Previously, Xiaohua did not know the origins of Star Moon Palace, and felt that it was very mysterious. He was afraid that only high-level cultivators from the 3 mainlands were qualified to come here. After Fairy Xingyu's introduction, Xiaohua gradually understood that Star Moon Palace was most useful for cultivators and demons around 7th grade essence force. However, when he arrived at Zhaixing Lu, Xiaohua actually saw Murong Tsongyun Gongshu Isen, and other aristocratic family disciples who were only at 5th grade essence force wanting to enter Star Moon Palace. These aristocratic family disciples were, after all, from first-class aristocratic families. Perhaps their potential was limitless, and they were qualified to enter Star Moon Palace. However, the 2 Confucian cultivators that Xiaohua saw now had average strength and aptitude. Xiaohua really did not know what special opportunity they would have if they entered Star Moon Palace. However, when he saw the smug look on their faces, Xiaohua somewhat understood. At this point, the opportunity in Star Moon Palace was no longer important. What was important was whether or not they could obtain the qualification to enter Star Moon Palace. This was a kind of glory, a capital that could be flaunted. In the eyes of Fairy Xingyu and Suji, Star Moon Palace is a matter of life and death. In the eyes of Gongshu Jingye and Murong Jiang, it is an opportunity for a breakthrough. However, in the eyes of many cultivators, it has become a kind of qualification. Xiaohua sighed. I have to say, in the eyes of different people, the same thing will have different effects. No matter how good the opportunity is, when it is fought over by everyone, it will also change its meaning. Seniors, there is no need to be anxious. Just as Xiaohua was about to leave, the Zhaixing Lu disciple in the auction hall said loudly, "After a while, Zhaixing Lu will use the defensive array in the building to send all of you to the place where the former enmity will be buried." Haha, really? The fat armament cultivator had just taken a dozen steps when he heard this and could not help but laugh. This Zhu's primordial stones are. At this point, the armament cultivator surnamed Zhu seemed to have spilled the beans and hurriedly shut his mouth. His 2 small eyes looked around and his face turned a shade of red. Brother Mu was also stunned, but he smiled slightly and said, "That's right, Zhaixing Lu's arrangement is excellent. When I met Brother Zhu in the hidden immortal continent, wasn't it also at Zhaixing Lu? I remember that day." Yes. Seeing that Brother Mu had changed the topic, the armament cultivator surnamed Zhu hurriedly interrupted. His pair of small eyes looked left and right. When he saw Xiaohua not far away with a faint smile, he fiercely glared at Xiaohua. Xiaohua innocently shrugged his shoulders. He also did not want to hear it, But this armament cultivator surnamed Zhu's voice was very loud. Not only Xiaohua but many people nearby also heard it. A few of them could not help but laugh. Swoosh! In just a moment, a nebula began to appear all around the auction hall. This nebula surrounded the several thousand feet large auction hall. Moreover, as the nebula spread down the four walls, the entire auction hall began to become transparent. One by one, brilliant stars appeared in the nebula. When the nebula gradually disappeared, the brilliant stars revealed different human figures. At this time, the auction hall had already turned into a star shape. Chapter 4484. Boom! High up in the sky there was a rumbling sound. Rings of light that were more dazzling than ordinary stars appeared. These rings of light were a few miles in size and rapidly expanded, enveloping an area of 100 miles. At this moment, streams of divine senses, elemental senses, and even more clear sight lights were scanning the entire starry sky. Seemed a little chaotic. Gotcha! There was another rumble of thunder. The rings of light began to turn transparent and huge subbodies appeared from within. Although the rings of light were extremely tall, everyone could see everything within them clearly. Those subbodies were Murongjiang, Gongshu Jingya, and the other martial grandmasters who were around the 7th grade of elemental power. These martial grandmasters released their vital energy and condensed it within the rings of light. Layers of confinement fell from the sky like city walls, enveloping the entire starry sky. The messy divine senses and clear sight lights from before were immediately swept away. No one dared to show any recklessness in front of the martial grandmasters. Xiaohua stood on a star that was slowly rising. He squinted his eyes and looked at the martial grandmasters within the rings of light. The rings of light were huge and there were many martial grandmasters. Xiaohua scanned with his eyes and knew that there were close to 200 martial grandmasters. This meant that there were close to 200 martial grandmasters who came to Zhaixinglu to prepare to enter Xingyue Palace. Looking below the rings of light, other than the star that Xiaohua was sitting on, there were hundreds of other stars that were gradually rising. Every star was filled with flickering silhouettes. There seemed to be more than 10,000 people. When all the stars had fallen below the rings of light, boom! There was another rumbling sound. In the middle of the rings of light, a full moon appeared out of thin air. The moonlight was like water, and a woman with picturesque features and dressed in palace attire flew out like a fairy. This woman was not as beautiful as Princess Baihua, but under the moonlight and starry sky, she had a unique charm. Almost everyone's gaze landed on her face, and they remained silent for a long time. I am Nan Huayue. Greetings to all the seniors. The woman landed and bowed to the martial grandmasters within the rings of light. Under the orders of my palace lord, I am here to help all the martial grandmasters bury the hatchet. Very good. A proud voice sounded from within the halo. Xiaohua looked over and saw a man with a simple face and thick eyebrows. First, the various aristocratic families hosted the challenges. Although it was somewhat legal, I always felt that it was unfair. Ever since Zhaixinglu hosted the challenges, the situation has improved a lot. Today, this old man is very satisfied with the starry sky arena. Please thank the palace lord on behalf of the Duanmu aristocratic family. Nan Huayue replied respectfully, I understand. I will definitely convey seniors' gratitude. Alright, we don't need to say anymore. The disciples of the aristocratic families all know the rules of the challenge to bury the hatchet. Before entering the Star Moon Palace, it's good to let these little kids stretch their muscles and bones. Gongshu Jingye opened his mouth, his voice like thunder. Yes, this old man hasn't seen so many aristocratic families' disciples gather together to exchange pointers for many years. I wonder how many outstanding disciples have emerged after so many years. Today I really want to broaden my horizons. A young man in luxurious clothes said with a smile on his face. Duanmu Lianheng raised his head and looked at the man in luxurious clothes opposite him. He said disdainfully, Brother Meng Cheng, this is a challenge to bury the hatchet. It's not a ranking battle for your Meng clan. If you don't have any grudges, there's no need to step forward. Brother Meng's words will cause some unnecessary misunderstandings. If there are some disciples who are as competitive as Brother Meng and want to stand out in this challenge, it will affect our plans to enter the Star Moon Palace. Why? Brother Duanmu seems to want to settle the personal grudges between us here? The Meng clan's great grandmaster Meng Cheng did not show any weakness. He smiled and said, although this challenge to bury the hatchet has yet to have a great grandmaster level battle, things in this world have always started from nothing. This Meng is willing to accompany Brother Duanmu to set this precedent. The words of an important figure had always been a necessity in some situations. None of the disciples present took the words of the Meng clan's great grandmaster seriously. The aristocratic families had many complicated relationships, so it was normal for them to casually tease each other. Unfortunately, just as the few great grandmasters from the aristocratic families were smiling, Duanmu Lianheng nodded and said, "Good." Then, a saber light that was like an exploding galaxy flew across the sky brilliantly and surged violently toward Meng Chang, who was opposite the full moon. Although the entire starry sky was a part of the fragmentary star Cold Moon Great Array, for the sake of the Confucian cultivators of the aristocratic family's challenge, there was no restriction or noble spirit in the starry sky. As the saber light swept past, lines of space cracks were formed, and the endless noble spirit pillar condensed into a phosphorescence that landed on the saber light. The roar completely covered the starry sky, and even the full moon was blown away. Damn it! Meng Cheng naturally did not expect Duanmu Lianheng to attack as he pleased. The saber light was already in front of him in the blink of an eye. The cold saber chi treated the halo as nothing and had already landed on Meng Cheng's subbody when Meng Cheng was caught off guard. Tens of thousands of fine lines split open on the subbody, and wisps of true chi flowed out from the fine lines. Meng Cheng did not doubt that if this saber hit him, his subbody would definitely be torn into pieces. Meng Cheng cursed in his heart and roared again, "Break!" Following this roar, Meng Cheng's subbody suddenly trembled, and a faint shadow flashed. The golden light turned into a fist that broke through the air and rushed toward the saber light that was like a river. The shadow had just appeared, but it was just a shadow. It only crossed a few dozen feet in the starry sky. The countless noble spirit pillar was even more vast than the saber light. The roar continuously crashed into the fist, and the armor inscriptions and tricolored clouds within the fist instantly condensed into a huge fist. The patterns on the fist were clear, and each pattern was a mountain. The tricolored clouds also covered the many mountains and rivers. At this time, the inscriptions on the armor also flowed on the surface of the fist, and a strand of human chi was produced like silk. The entire fist was filled with the unique noble spirit of the Ming family. It was like a mountain that blocked the murderous river of stars. Boom! The mountain-like fist collided with the water-like saber light. The water wrapped around the mountainside, and the mountain broke the water flow. In the space not far below Nanhuayue, the attacks of the two grandmasters finally collided. A huge roar sounded, and wisps of lightning actually flashed out. The noble spirit pillar turned into countless tiny vortexes, and crazily surged into the starry sky in all directions. Within the lightning, the entire starry sky was shaking. Thousands of explosions were produced everywhere, and the space was torn apart, forming a storm that rushed toward the full moon. Nanhuayue's expression changed greatly. Starlight flashed around her body, and she wanted to escape toward the full moon. However, the noble spirit pillar imprisoned her for dozens of miles around her. Nanhuayue's figure moved a few times, but she couldn't fly out. The wave-like force had already rushed below her. Not only was her palace dress disheveled, even the true energy protecting her body was scattered. At this critical moment, whoosh! The full moon not far from Nanhuayue suddenly bloomed with milky white moonlight. The moonlight was like milk spilling out. Wherever it flowed, all the forces were calmed. Not only did the danger around Nanhuayue disappear instantly, even the space that was torn apart by Duanmu Lianheng and Meng Cheng's attacks disappeared without a trace. When the moonlight filled the entire place, a tranquil and holy aura was slowly born in the nearby starry sky. The entire place was quiet, and there wasn't a trace of the mortal world. Everyone seemed to be intoxicated in the moonlight paradise. Senior Duanmu, Senior Meng. Nanhuayue suppressed her panic and said with a smile, "If the two of you want to participate in the challenge to bury the hatchet, it's naturally possible. However, you still need to report to me. Otherwise, wouldn't it be improper? Haha, we're all boorish people. We've truly disturbed the fairy." Meng Cheng was the first to speak, and he said with a smile, "This old man apologizes to the fairy in person." Hearing Meng Cheng's gentle and refined voice and his lukewarm tone, how could the boorish person he spoke of be himself? He was clearly mocking Duanmu Lianheng. However, Duanmu Lianheng also snorted coldly and didn't reply. Gongshu Jingyi smiled and said, "This old man heard that the Duanmu family was going to put on a good show today, but I didn't expect that the main character wouldn't appear, and Brother Duanmu would actually be a walk-on. This old man really doesn't understand. Are they trying to put on a show of strength? Or does Brother Duanmu really want to spar with Brother Mengcheng?" Another voice sounded from afar, and he said with a smile, "That's right. If Brother Mengcheng and Brother Duanmu fight, I'm afraid we'll have 2 fewer opponents entering the Star Moon Palace. Why wouldn't we be happy? Hurry up. Seniors." Nan Huayue pursed her lips and said with a smile, "Duanmu and the 2 seniors from the Meng family are just joking with me. You don't have to take it seriously. Seniors, if it's possible, can we bury the hatchet and start the challenge now?" "Yes, let's start." Duanmu Lianheng's voice sounded slightly cold. Meng Cheng also smiled and said, "Fairy Nan, please start. We'll listen to Zhai Xinglu's arrangements from now on." We don't dare. Nan Huayue said respectfully, "This junior is only cooperating with the seniors. The real decision is in the hands of the seniors." After she finished speaking, Nan Huayue raised her hand and took out a round purple square cauldron from her palace dress. She said, "Seniors, please put the names of the fellow immortals who are participating in this challenge into this general dispatch cauldron. This junior will invite these fellow immortals out one by one according to the rules of the challenge." Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. As Nan Huayue sent the general dispatch cauldron into the starry sky, the jade eyes in the hands of the various great grandmasters turned into shooting stars and fell into the cauldron. Every time a jade eye fell, the sound of a drum would be heard from the cauldron. After the jade eyes disappeared, the sonorous and powerful battle drum formation music also left a lingering sound in the starry sky. Fight, fight, fight. The battle drums had just stopped, but the sound of thousands of horses neighing could be heard again. All the disciples from the various great grandmasters felt their blood boil, and they couldn't help but roar with the battle drum music. Chapter 4485. Thump, thump, thump. Another slow and heavy beat of the drum resounded. Nan Huayue's voice was filled with gentleness and desolation as he said, "According to the rules of the challenge to bury the hatchet, the aristocratic family's ranking will be the first to step out." As he spoke, a thunderous drumming sound rang out. 2 extraordinarily handsome Pegasus phantoms flew out of the cauldron. Each of the Pegasus was carrying a square token. The flying horses landed in front of Nan Huayue. They snorted and flapped their wings. They looked exactly like divine steeds. Nan Huayue raised her hand and took the 2 tokens from the horse's back. The flying horses neighed and disappeared into the starry sky. Nan Huayue raised her left hand. Her eyes flashed and she smiled. "The first round is Duanmu Qing from the Duanmu family." As she spoke, she glanced at the other token and read, "Emo Jianli." "Emo Jianli? Who is Emo Jianli?" The moment Nan Huayue spoke, all the aristocratic family disciples were stunned. The few Confucian cultivators around Xiaohua began to discuss. "How come I didn't know there was a Mo family? Could it be that I am ignorant?" "It's not that you are ignorant. This Mo Jianli is probably not an aristocratic family disciple. That's why we didn't know. Furthermore, according to what I know, the aristocratic family with a higher level will go first. If their opponent is not from the aristocratic family, they will go first. After all, this is a challenge between aristocratic families. If they don't show off their aura, how can they succeed?" "This Mo Jianli is unlucky," another person said in a low voice. "It would be good if someone else was the leader of the Duanmu family. This senior's temper is not good. This Mo Jianli actually offended a Duanmu family disciple. I'm afraid he won't be able to leave alive." "That's right. His anger was blocked by Great Grandmaster Meng just now. He has nowhere to vent it. If he has nowhere to vent it, he can't do it himself. This Duanmu Qing is only at the 4th level of essence energy. How powerful can his enemy, Emo Jianli, be? If he were to make a move, wouldn't he lose face first?" As everyone was discussing, 2 faint beams of light flew out from the full moon and landed on 2 stars. Duanmu Qing, who looked like an elegant young master, flew into the starry sky along with the moonlight. She held a folding fan in her hand and looked very elegant. Under the other light beam, Emo Jianli flew out, looking slightly sloppy. Emo Jianli looked old. In the past 200 years he had experienced all the sufferings of the world. He had seen all the vicissitudes of the world. He did not care about clothes anymore. Looking at Emo Jianli, one could see the maturity of the vicissitudes of life. Now, compared to Duanmu Qing, he was an uncle. Boom! Before Emo Jianli could land in front of Duanmu Qing, the entire place was filled with laughter. That Meng Chang even shouted, "The disciples of the Duanmu family are really not making any progress. A Zhongshe disciple actually can't get along with a literary master. If this was my Meng family, I would have killed him with a single slap." Haha. Amidst the roaring laughter, there was another wave of laughter. The Meng family's disciples all echoed. Inside the halo, Duanmu Lianheng's face was ashen. His two eyes stared at Duanmu Qing's back and anger rose in his heart. Duanmu Qing was from a side branch of the Duanmu family. Duanmu Lianheng originally did not care about it. However, Duanmu Qing mentioned that Xiaohua was a Dao cultivator that the Duanmu family wanted to kill. Furthermore, Duanmu Qing was also a disciple of the Duanmu family. Duanmu Lianheng casually allowed her to participate in the challenge to bury the hatchet. However, Duanmu Lianheng did not expect that he would draw Duanmu Qing in the first round. Furthermore, the opponent that Duanmu Qing made the vow to was not Xiaohua, but a literary master. Although he knew that there was something fishy going on, this joke was obviously over. Emo Jianli was originally a little terrified. However, when he heard the roaring laughter of the crowd, the unyielding spirit in his heart rose again. He swept his gaze across the crowd. Although he could not see many faces clearly, he was sure that the reason why he was displaced was definitely due to the pressure exerted by some of these disciples. The destruction of the Chongyun sect was also the result of these disciples' inaction. What did he have to fear when facing them? Only he had the advantage of suppressing them. Thinking of this, Emo Jianli straightened his back slightly. This straightening was like a sharp sword, like a beautiful jade horsetail whisk. The accumulation of over 200 years exploded at this moment. A glowing jade-like divine light shone from Emo Jianli's body. Seeing this, how could Xiaohua not know what was going on? He stopped moving and looked at Emo Jianli with interest. If the previous Emo Jianli was Wen Chu's disciple, he would naturally not be qualified. However, the current Emo Jianli was probably barely qualified. Emo Jianli. Duanmu Qing saw Emo Jianli fly out and kept the folding fan in her hand. She smiled and said, "You really came out? Where's Xiaohua? Did he stand you up?" "Since I made the vow with you, then I naturally came out. If you want to fight with Senior Xiao, then you can stand here and not leave." Emo Jianli did not have the previous uneasiness and said to Duanmu Qing, who was at the 4th grade of elemental energy. Duanmu Qing's face was filled with awkwardness. She did not dare to reply casually. She looked around and did not see Xiaohua's shadow. She said, "If Xiaohua does not dare to come out, you are also not my opponent. How about this, you apologize to me on behalf of Xiaohua, and this challenge will end here." "No way." Emo Jianli shook his head and said, "What Senior Xiao did was not wrong. Why should he apologize to you? If we talk about the matter itself, you should be the one apologizing. Of course, since it is a challenge to let bygones be bygones, there is no point in saying all this. I accept the challenge from the aristocratic families." Emo Jianli finished his sentence in one breath. Duanmu Qing was so angry that she almost fainted, because at this moment he had no way of explaining anything. He had already become a profligate son who used his power to bully others. "All right." Duanmu Qing nodded and said, "Since that is the case, I will fulfill your wish. If Xiaohua does not come, I will fight with you." "What if Senior Xiao comes?" Emo Jianli said sarcastically. "Are you going to be a coward?" "Emo Jianli." Duanmu Qing was completely enraged. She roared angrily, "This is a challenge to let bygones be bygones. Don't show off your filthy words. Are you going to fight or not?" "I don't care." Emo Jianli was not angry at all. He only shrugged and said, "The key is to see if Duanmu eldest young master. Are you going to fight or not?" Duanmu Qing gritted her teeth. In the end she still shouted, "If it is you I will fight." Without waiting for Duanmu Qing to finish speaking, a thunderous sound came from afar. Duanmu Lianheng was already impatient and ordered. Duanmu Qing's body shook. She could only nod and said, "That's right, fight." When the word fight came out, Duanmu Qing suddenly felt a chill down her spine. She realized that she had been tricked. Needless to say, this must be Xiaohua's plan. Under the eyes of thousands of people, he forced her to fight. Duanmu Qing did not know how strong Xiaohua was. Just based on Xiaohua's cultivation, Duanmu Qing was not afraid. However, the problem was that even Gong Shui Xian had to call Xiaohua senior. How would he dare to fight Xiaohua? Sure enough, just as Duanmu Qing's voice landed, a figure appeared indifferently. Under his feet was a cloud and he flew out from one of the stars. Seeing Xiaohua's thin and tall figure, Duanmu Qing immediately looked like she had lost her father. Her face was pale and her eyes were spitting fire as she stared at Xiaohua. If looks could kill, Xiaohua would have died 100 times. Senior Xiao. Nan Huayue opened her mouth in surprise. Previously, when she heard Duanmu Qing mention Xiaohua's name, she had some doubts. However, she did not expect that a mere scholar realm cultivator would dare to offend a human Mahayana realm cultivator. However, Nan Huayue only opened her mouth and did not say anything else. She was afraid that she would disrupt Xiaohua's plan. Of course, she also did not think that Xiaohua would really attack Duanmu Qing. Sure enough, Xiaohua flew to Mo Jianli's side and said with a smile, "This Xiao is here. You should obediently be a coward." Ha ha ha. Another wave of laughter rang out. Duanmu Qing's face was incomparably ashen. However, after the laughter there was also a lot of discussion. Good heavens, who is this cultivator? How can he be so arrogant? Oh, it's actually a Taoist cultivator? It looks like he's just a Yuanying realm cultivator of the 4th grade? Nonsense, if he's a Yuanying realm cultivator of the 5th grade, would you still be able to see him here? No, a Yuanying realm cultivator is on par with Duanmu Qing. How can he force Duanmu Qing into such a sorry state? Fight! If Duanmu Qing cowered now, then he would really become a coward. He would never be able to see Gongshu Yiming's face again. Therefore, Duanmu Qing's eyes were also red as she shouted, "Xiaohua, this one has already accumulated hatred with you for more than 200 years. Today we can finally bury the hatchet. This one has been looking forward to this battle for a long time." Haha. Xiaohua laughed and pointed at Duanmu Qing. "If you wanted to fight, you could have fought back then. At that time you could have fought with this Xiao. Perhaps in the future, there wouldn't be the Duanmu clan's kill order. However, at this time, you are no longer worthy to fight with this Xiao." Kill order? What is going on? Another person asked loudly. Xiaohua did not need to turn his head to know that this was a disciple of the Meng clan. Naturally, there's no need to talk about such filthy things under the moonlight. Xiaohua said with a smile. "Besides, this Xiao is a person of noble character. I have long forgotten about such things." Haha, good Taoist Xiao. Hearing Xiaohua slander the Duanmu clan, the Meng clan disciple immediately gave Xiaohua a tall hat. Taoist Xiao? Suddenly, a few martial grandmasters sitting in the halo trembled as if they had realized something. They blurted out, "Xiao, is it Xiao country Xiao?" Meng Shang of the Meng clan was the first to realize. He shouted, "Xiaohua, don't be afraid. My Meng clan will stand up for you in this battle." What kill order? To actually issue a kill order to Taoist Xiao, whose name shook the entire hidden immortal continent. You don't even have the most basic conscience. What qualifications do you have to sit here and call yourself a Confucian clan? Chapter 4486. Damn it. Duanmu Lianheng cursed a few times. He really did not think so much. Moreover, the kill order was something that happened before the Godfiend blood pool. It had nothing to do with the Xiao Empire later. Thank you for your high opinion of me. Xiaohua smiled and raised his hand to signal to the surroundings. I don't need your help to deal with the Duanmu family. If I need your help in the future, I will definitely ask. Duanmu Lianheng could no longer endure and laughed coldly. I want to see how a Taoist cultivator will deal with my Duanmu family. Duanmu Qing, fight. Yes, the boy knows. Duan Muqing was forced to do something beyond her ability. She clenched her teeth and said, I would rather die than live in dishonor. You think too highly of yourself. You are just a pile of rubble. Xiao Hua said indifferently, You are not worthy enough to fight with me. As he spoke, Xiao Hua said to Emo Jianli, Jianli, come back. Yes, senior. Seeing Xiao Hua standing there, looking down on the disciples of the aristocratic families as if they were nothing, Emo Jianli was convinced and flew back to Xiao Hua's side. Duan Muqing snorted coldly. If I don't try, who knows if you are talking nonsense? As she spoke, the tricolored qi around Duan Muqing's body surged. Streams of awe-inspiring qi flew out from the void and collided with his body. A kind of desolation that felt like the wind was blowing and the water was freezing was slowly born. Xiao Hua smiled faintly. With a wave of his left hand, the Kunlun mirror appeared. One of the light pillars shot out and Yuanya flew out from the light pillar with his bare hands. He stood in the starry sky in a daze and looked around at the Confucian cultivators in the halo. See, every Confucian cultivator who was glanced at by Yuanya felt a chill down their spine and sucked in a breath of cold air. Seventh grade elemental energy? Yuanya's gaze only glanced at the halo and immediately saw Xiao Hua behind him. In an instant, Yuanya had already treated all the heroes as nothing. He bowed and said, Master, why did you call me out? Master? Duan Muqing was stunned. A 7th grade elemental energy Confucian cultivator actually called Xiao Hua Master? How is this possible? His name is Duan Muqing. I presume you know him as well. Xiao Hua pointed at Duan Muqing and said, He wants to challenge me. Do as you see fit. Oh. When Yuanya heard this, he turned to look at Duan Muqing. After sizing her up, he grinned and said, Yes, master. I know this brat. Seeing Yuanya's appearance, Duan Muqing suddenly had a slight impression of him. Back then, in front of the star-plucking tower in the Bronze Pillar Nation, Yuanya, Xiaojian and Lui were also by his side. However, Yuanya was too lowly at that time. How could Duan Muqing remember him? If Xiao Hua hadn't mentioned it, he definitely wouldn't have remembered it. That's right, that's me. Clouds appeared under Yuanya's feet as he flew towards Duan Muqing to take a look. He continued to say, So it is the awe-inspiring young master Duanmu from that night. It has been many years since we last met. As he spoke, Yuanya shouted in a deep voice, Back then, you were so arrogant and domineering. You sat on the dragon horse flying chariot and were so arrogant. Today, take a punch from me. As Yuanya's voice fell, a boom sound broke through the air. Yuanya raised his arm slightly and punched out with his right fist. Yuanya's punch was completely different from Meng Cheng's. The size of his fist didn't change, but when it landed in the starry sky, it was like a stone falling into water. Not only did it cause ripples, it also brought about waves. The space around Duan Muqing was shattered layer by layer like snowflakes. Duan Muqing was originally afraid of Yuanya, who was at the 7th grade of essence power. When she saw Yuanya's merciless attack, not only was she terrified, but she saw that the fist had just appeared and the fist technique was already in front of her. The fist force was like a tidal wave as it roared and destroyed Duan Muqing's mouth and nose. Furthermore, a ferocious flame that covered the sky and covered the earth firmly imprisoned Duan Muqing like a hungry wolf hunting for its prey. Everyone was shocked. The close to 200 Confucian martial grandmasters were also dumbfounded. This was because they had just seen Yuanya's fist dance, and his fist had just left a mark in the starry sky. Yuanya's fist had already landed on Duan Muqing's body without any exaggeration. Ooh! It was a very ordinary sound, not much louder than the sound of a flower bud blooming. Yuanya's fist made contact with Duan Muqing's chest. Gotcha! Within Duan Muqing's Confucian robe, there was a cracking sound. Several rays of light flashed and the Confucian robe turned into butterflies and scattered. At the same time, the treasured armor within the Confucian robe was also shattered into pieces. Not only that, under the treasured armor, poo-poo, the sound of flesh and blood bursting could be heard. Countless amounts of true energy surged out from Duan Muqing's body. Poo! There was another muffled sound. Duan Muqing raised her head and spat out a mouthful of blood. The blood was mixed with a rich three-colored true energy. This true energy and blood actually transformed into a dim jade lotus in midair. However, this jade lotus disappeared in a flash. Duan Muqing's body was like duckweed as she slowly descended from the starry sky. Damn it! Duanmu Lianheng raised his hand and waved. Just as a ray of cloud was about to fly out, Nan Huayue raised his hand and pointed. A ray of moonlight covered the unconscious Duan Muqing. When Duanmu Lianheng saw that Duan Muqing was saved by Nan Huayue, he could no longer hold himself back. He urged his subbody to fly out from the halo and said angrily, "You are a senior with the 7th grade of essence energy. How can you deal with a junior with the 4th grade of essence energy? You have shattered his middle dantian. How can he cultivate in the future? Aren't you bullying the weak?" Yuanya coldly glanced at him. That gaze carried a kind of vigilance. Seeing that Duanmu Lianheng was standing there and didn't directly attack, Yuanya said, "Back then, my master was only at the 3rd grade of essence energy. This Duan Muqing commanded Duan Muqiu to surround and attack him. Furthermore, my master was all alone in the world and your Duanmu clan issued a kill order. Who are you calling shameless? I heard from my master that the Duanmu clan actually sent a martial grandmaster with the 5th grade of essence energy to kill him. Who are you calling bullying the weak? I only crippled his cultivation because he was too weak. If he was a little stronger, I would have directly killed him." How arrogant was Duanmu Lianheng? He was a Confucian cultivator who could take down the golden body of Nanwu Guanyin Bodhisattva with a single blade. However, facing Yuanya's rebuttal, he actually didn't know how to reply. Following that, Yuanya glanced at Duanmu Lianheng and said, "I am Fortune Gate's Yuanya. Who are you? Do you want to fight? If you want to fight, then fight. If you don't want to fight, then scram." When had Duanmu Lianheng ever encountered such humiliation in his life? He didn't say anything else. He waved his right hand and that blade light flew out again. It was like a thunderbolt falling towards Yuanya. The space above Yuanya's head collapsed bit by bit. "Damned old man, sneak attack again." Meng Cheng shouted. "What else can your Duanmu clan do besides sneak attacks?" Who? Seeing that the blade light was about to reach his body, Yuanya didn't care at all. He used the ethereal steps and his right hand moved. The Big Dipper divine fist was swung out again. Where the fist landed, the space was also shattered. Spiderweb-like spatial cracks surged out. In a flash, the fist landed on the blade light. Amidst the sound of metal and stone, the blade light was smashed into pieces by the stone-like fist. A bloodthirsty fist wind passed through the blade intent and directly rushed into Duanmu Lianheng's body. This Dao Gates cultivator is so powerful. The group of Confucian disciples were shocked, and they all exclaimed in unison, "This so-called Fortune Gate disciple Yuanya is able to fight to a draw with Duanmu Lianheng of the Duanmu family. Then what about the master he mentioned? Wouldn't he be able to easily take Duanmu Lianheng's life?" Not only were the Confucian disciples shocked, even Duanmu Lianheng was shocked once again. This fist wind was filled with blood. If a cultivator hadn't heard of the blood massacre, they definitely wouldn't have such a fist wind. Although Duanmu Lianheng's cultivation seemed to be slightly stronger than Yuanya's, his morale definitely couldn't compare to Yuanya's, who had fought to the death with the Devil clan. Puff, puff, puff. Like an explosion, the protective layer around Duanmu Lianheng's body rushed into his body through his hand. Not only did the explosion cause cracks to appear on Duanmu Lianheng's Confucian cultivation, it even created ripples in the nearby starry sky. Senior Duanmu. Before Duanmu Lianheng could circulate his true qi to resist this fist wind, Nan Huayue anxiously said, "You're not in the general dispatching cauldron, so you can't do anything." Duanmu Lianheng hurriedly retreated and took a deep breath. The clouds around his body surged once again, and he barely managed to disperse Yuanya's fist wind. Then, he pretended to be innocent and pointed at Yuanya, saying this senior Yuanya is the disciple designated by Senior Shao. So he's in line with the rules of the challenge to bury the hatchet. Nan Huayue said, "You didn't receive Duan Muqing's order, so if you want to do anything, you can put in the command talisman again." Alright. How could Duanmu Lianheng show weakness? He narrowed his eyes and said, "I'll challenge this Taoist Shao." Just as Duanmu Lianheng finished speaking, Nan Huayue, Duanmu Lianheng, and many other Confucian martial grandmasters shone with a radiance. Nan Huayue was startled. She raised her hand and picked up a jade pendant. Her clear gaze fell upon it, and a surprised expression appeared on her face. After a moment she said, "Seniors, the Tower Lord has sent a message that the Xianhuang Command Talisman is going to update the Xianhuang Proclamation. Junior remembers that all the seniors have bid for the Xianhuang Proclamation from my Zhai Xinglu presumably. It was the Tower Lord who sent the message to all of you. If it's possible, Junior will announce the Xianhuang Proclamation here?" "All right." Meng Cheng clapped his hands and smiled. After reading the Xianhuang Proclamation, we'll see how Duanmu Lianheng sneak attacks Daoist Shao. "Shut up!" Duanmu Lianheng roared. "Meng Cheng, if you're not convinced, you can come down and fight. Can you wait until this old man comes down?" Meng Cheng smiled and said, "You'd better think about how to deal with this Fortune Gates disciple after the Xianhuang Proclamation is updated. If there are no objections, Junior will announce the new Xianhuang Proclamation on behalf of my Zhai Xinglu." Nan Huayue looked at everyone and asked. Chapter 4487. Quick, quick, quick. Gongshu Jingyi said with a smile, "I want to see who will become an influential figure in the Taoist sect in a few years." Hearing that the Xianhuang token had updated the Xianhuang Proclamation, all the Confucian cultivators were in high spirits. They all looked at Nan Huayue with wide eyes. After all, the Xianhuang Proclamation was not only a hunting list, but also a huge gamble with the 3 continents as a plate. All the Confucian cultivators wanted to get some excitement from the Xianhuang Proclamation. However, when everyone's gaze fell on Nan Huayue, his face turned red again. He seemed to be embarrassed as he said, "Seniors, I have a small condition. Speak quickly." Duanmu Lianheng scolded impatiently. Meng Cheng said coldly, "Brother Duanmu, why are you so rude? As the representative of the Duanmu family, even if you can't have tender feelings for the fairer sex, I'm afraid you can't scold a young girl, right? Can't you see that she's embarrassed before she even speaks?" Damn it! Duanmu Lianheng's eyes overflowed with brilliance as he looked at Meng Cheng. His tone was filled with anger. However, he only cursed inwardly. He glanced at Yuanya from the corner of his eyes and suppressed his anger. "I know that seniors have already bid for the Xianhuang Proclamation." Nan Huayue smiled apologetically. "However, the Xianhuang Proclamation will be transmitted to the Thousand Demons Sacred Realm after it's published on the Hidden Immortal Continent. Just now, the Tower Master sent a message saying that if we want to publish it together with the Hidden Immortal Continent, it will cost a lot of origin stones. If seniors want to see it now, please take out 50% of the origin stones." "I'm sorry, seniors. Damn it. Isn't this raising the price?" Murongjiang cursed in a low voice. Gongshu Jingyi pondered for a moment and said, "Miss Nan, your Tower Master is right. If we use ordinary methods to obtain the Xianhuang Proclamation, it won't cost too much even in the Thousand Demons Sacred Realm. However, there will be a long delay. Now that we want to obtain the Xianhuang Proclamation in both the Thousand Demons Sacred Realm and the Hidden Immortal Continent, I'm afraid we'll have to use some secret formations of the Star-Picking Tower. Even my Gongshu family doesn't have such a secret formation in the Thousand Demons Sacred Realm. Of course, my Gongshu family also knows how difficult it is to construct the Xianhuang Proclamation. It's worth it to spend some origin stones. Fine, my Gongshu family is willing to take out these primordial stones." As he spoke, Gongshu Jingyi sent a voice transmission to a star in the distance. A disciple of the Gongshu family flew over with the yin-yang bracelet and handed it to Nan Huayue. Nan Huayue released his divine perception to take a look before carefully withdrawing it. He bowed and said, "Many thanks to Senior Gongshu. You are the one who empathizes with Zhai Xinglu's hard work." Since the Gongshu aristocratic family had taken the lead, the other aristocratic families didn't have much to say. In just a moment, the aristocratic families also replenished their primeval stones. After Nan Huayue sent all of the origin stones into the full moon above his head, he heard a series of rumbling sounds from the starry sky. A fist-sized vortex appeared amidst the rumbling sounds. Several dark green threads of lightning flickered within the vortex, and a kind of powerful void energy surged out from the vortex and instantly covered the entire space. Teleportation channel? Xiaohua glanced over and couldn't help but frown. This was because the dark green threads of lightning were very similar to the 3 corpses in lightning. The void energy within the vortex even revealed the aura of a teleportation channel. Boom, boom, boom. After the whirlpool was formed, the sound of thunder slowed down. However, with every rumble, the whirlpool would increase in size. In less than half a cup of tea's time, the space above the full moon was enveloped by the whirlpool. At this time, the vortexes overlapped and became heavier, like rotating stars. An incomparably vast aura came from the vortexes, and between the vortexes, the strands of lightning that were like hair before were now like horned dragons. These lightning bolts were connected to different vortexes, and as they flickered, they seemed to have the power to destroy the world. Other great masters might not have felt anything, but Gongshu Jingye's eyes flashed with silver moon pupils, and his face showed astonishment. The Gongshu family had always been famous for their arrays, and Gongshu Jingye was also an array master. However, he had never seen the Gongshu family build such a huge defensive array. Moreover, in his silver moon pupils, he didn't see any trace of a defensive array at all. He didn't even see the Dharma power of an ordinary Taoist array. No wonder Zhai Xinglu is so powerful. Gongshu Jingye thought to himself in surprise. Just from this inexplicable array, I can see how extraordinary Zhai Xinglu is from one side. Not to mention my Gongshu family. Even the 4 great families might not be able to build such an array in the Thousand Demons Sacred Realm to directly receive the news of the Xianhuang token updating the Xianhuang list, right? Gongshu Jingye was surprised, and so were the other great masters of Confucian cultivation. The disciples of Confucian cultivation who were on many stars were already drunk. Previously, everyone thought Zhai Xinglu was taking advantage of the situation and wanted to collect more vitality stones. However, when they saw such a huge array for the purpose of sending messages, none of them felt that the vitality stones they had spent before were in vain. Boom, boom, boom. Just as everyone was waiting, the vortexes of different sizes roared again. Bolts of 5 qi righteous thunder and lightning bolts of 5 qi righteous thunder and lightning bolts fell. Inscription chains scattered after the lightning bolts, striking the starry sky like a heavenly punishment. Under the lightning bolts and inscription chains, thousands of immortal palace wheels rushed over like thousands of galloping horses. The space under the vortexes was swept clean, leaving only the awe-inspiring qi. Then waves of green water rushed in. The green water carried the immortal palace's string music. Under the cover of the water, immortal beasts and birds, as well as immortal palace pavilions and beautiful immortal palace buildings, appeared. Many disciples of Confucian cultivation families were mesmerized. Roar! Just as everyone was mesmerized, a dragon's roar sounded. The tens of thousands of palaces shattered, and thousands of hectares of greenery collapsed. A huge black dragon flew out of the debris. When the black dragon rushed high into the sky, roar! Another tiger's roar sounded, and an earthy yellow tiger roared out. The dragon soared and the tiger leaped. Gotcha! The 5 qi righteous thunder struck out of nowhere, and the black dragon turned into a black list. The list was faintly surrounded by dragon shapes. The yellow tiger naturally turned into a yellow list, and there was a tiger shape at the bottom of the list. Great! Dozens of disciples of Confucian cultivation families on the stars couldn't help but cheer. This awe-inspiring qi was the immortal palace's qi righteous qi. Boom, boom, before the disciples could cheer, 2 more thunderbolts struck the top of the 2 lists. Under the thunderbolts, not only did the 4 ancient inscriptions of Profound List and Yellow List appear on the 2 lists, but a solemn, dignified, and mighty aura gushed out from the 4 characters and filled the entire space. Xiao Hua looked at the appearance of the Profound Yellow List and couldn't help but snort coldly. He inwardly criticized, although this qi righteous qi looks grand, it's actually strong on the outside but weak on the inside. It's just a list. It's just borrowing the name of the immortal palace to increase its own prestige. Swoosh! The Profound Yellow List was revealed, and thousands of clouds gushed out from the void. Those clouds floated over the Profound Yellow List, and like dots of ink falling down, blood-colored names appeared on the Profound Yellow List one by one. The first name on the Profound List was Grand Mist Ancestor of the Great Desolate Mountain. The second was Lianghui Mountain Taoist Master. And the third was Dark Knight of the Burning Glass Pool. These 3 Taoist cultivators' names were huge, but the names behind them were much smaller. Among them, Zhai Xingzi, Zhang Daoran, and Sun Kong Shangren, who Xiao Hua was familiar with, were also ranked 71st, 79th, and 82nd respectively. Overturning Heaven Shangren was ranked 53rd. Ao Zhantian and Shui Mingzi were not on this profound list. Sigh. Xiao Hua's gaze fell, and he couldn't help but frown. The Taoist cultivators above the 4th level of origin power are listed on the profound list. There are a total of 108 of them. So many cultivators above the spirit severing stage. How come I don't know so many of them? It seems like the hidden immortal continent is really full of hidden dragons and crouching tigers. Xiao Hua deliberately looked at the last few names on the profound list, because in his impression, he should be ranked first on the yellow list before he entered the Dragon Island. And he killed the assassin of the mysterious Yellow Order, so he should be ranked on the profound list. Sure enough, 200 years was enough to erase a lot of memories. His name didn't appear on the profound list, so no one knew that Xiao Hua was once ranked on the profound list. After looking at the profound list, the yellow list also appeared in the multicolored light. 360 bloody names appeared in front of everyone. The first one was Taoist Master Qing Su of the Great Song Mountain Range. Soaring Dragon Mountain Range's Xiong Yi, Soaring Dragon Mountain Range's Li Xiang, and His Highness Lan of the Soaring Dragon Mountain Range were ranked 67th, 81st, and 107th respectively. As for Chong Yu of the Soaring Dragon Mountain Range, he was ranked 304th because he was only at the early nascent soul stage. Xian Ping, Su Tingzi, and the others were not on the profound list. Xiao Hua had seen the other Taoist cultivators on the Yaotai Mountain before, but Xiao Hua didn't know most of them. After the multicolored light faded, the profound list and the yellow list gradually returned to normal. Those bloody names seemed like a mocking smile, and even more so, it seemed like they were looking at the numerous Confucian cultivators with desolate eyes. Oh, Murongjiang, who was in the distant halo, asked in a low voice. This old man remembers that Xiao Hua was ranked last on the previous profound list. Why is there no trace of him here? I'll let Senior Murong know. Nan Huayue said in a low voice. Junior checked the profound list before. Senior Xiao was once on the yellow list and later on, he was ranked on the profound list. Then, for some unknown reason, he disappeared again. Xiao? Xiao Hua. I remember now, isn't he that Taoist cultivator who was suppressed by Qingyu some time ago? Another great grandmaster from a Confucian family asked curiously. Since he has been suppressed, he will naturally disappear from the profound board. That Confucian martial grandmaster naturally said what the majority of the Confucian cultivators were thinking. The entire halo once again returned to normal. Everyone seemed to be pondering why Xiao Hua suddenly left by Qingyu, and also seemed to be waiting for the profound list to be updated. You're tuning into the Li Mei's Sword of Destiny YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.